What's up, guys? Welcome to the second episode of my podcast, Bird Call. Today on the show, we have none other than Balance Gaming's Sami Druggedfox Vuhana. Sami is a world-renowned competitor, analyst, and coach. I consider him a great friend. He's been proficient at the top level of play with multiple characters, and it has an insanely deep understanding of the game.
Hi guys, it's me.
Woohoo!
Cameron. Definitely one of my good friends. I'm excited to be here and talk to you.
All right. So the first question, we were talking before the show about how I was going to ask you some questions that even I don't know the answers to. Oddly enough, the first one is one that I actually don't know the answer to. So how long have you been playing, and do you remember your first tournament?
Okay, so I started playing when I was 12 years old in December of 2004.
Okay.
Um, the way I started was my friend Articanus, who you know, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
We just met in middle school or whatever, and we both mentioned we play Smash, and he was like, "Hey, I found this cool video called Shine Blind." He showed me it,
Shoot.
and we were like, "Okay, we're gonna get good at this," and then it takes off from there, right?
That's so cool. So you didn't play it casually, like right when the GameCube came out or anything?
I played casually, and it was my favorite. So this is cool. It's been my favorite game since the first time I played it, but I didn't own the game.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I owned 64, didn't own Melee, but I always played it at like family gatherings and stuff.
Right.
Funnily enough, in 64, I mained Pikachu and Fox as a casual. And
Wow.
in Melee, I mained Fox when I first started. And the only thing that happened was my older cousin would beat up me and my younger cousin, and he would do it with Sheik.
Okay.
And I was like, well, Sheik is broken. So even as a casual, I switched to Sheik because I was like, well, Sheik is obviously broken.
No
So
way.
even
That's
as a
crazy.
casual, I made Sheik Fox.
Wow. Do you
Yeah.
think that you actually had like a good eye for characters that were good in the game, or do you just get lucky?
Honestly, don't know. I will say I've literally never mained a non-high or top tier in any game I've ever played, and I never checked the tier list first. So
That's crazy.
I
Yeah.
think it's just luck that the aesthetic I like usually is a pretty good. It's like fast ninja-like characters are almost always good characters. So.
Mhm. Yeah, same thing with me. I just answered that question yesterday. I started playing when I was like 6 years old, casually, but Falco was my main character, and it's like, okay, well, I've stuck with Falco this whole time, and it turns out he's a great character. But I did also play Ganon, so not really
Ganon's
the
sick.
best.
Ganon's super sick.
So, did you start playing? When was your first tournament then? Do you remember that?
Okay, so since I lived 4.5 hours away from any Melee community, and I was like 12, I couldn't really go to stuff.
hmm
I remember my first two tournaments pretty clearly, though. My first tournament was I was visiting my cousins in Atlanta, which is where I live now,
hmm
and there was a tournament, and my dad took me or whatever. I was literally 13. I remember showing up to the venue like an hour ahead of time and just sitting there
Nice.
like a fucking nerd. And I remember so I'm literally like this 13-year-old kid, and then these people walk in, they have a setup, and I'm like, yay, I get to play.
hmm
And then I sit down and I just like body like 8 of them in a row,
That's
and they're
sick.
like, who is this like little kid or whatever?
hmm
And that tournament I ended up making it out of pools pretty easily. And then I think I went 1-2 or 0-2, I don't remember,
Okay.
after pools. But then my next tournament, we all went on a trip together, like all the Savannah boys, and it was
Mhm.
like maybe a year later, so like 2005 summer, I
Wow.
think,
Okay.
or 2006, and I got second at that tournament.
hmm And this whole time, when you saw Shine Blind, you picked up the game with your friend Articanus. You've been practicing tech skill like for that year before your second tournament, and like you
Yeah,
knew about
well,
competitive
we
melee.
played together, so it was like me, Articanus, and then one other guy named Greg, who nobody's ever heard of, nobody ever will, probably.
Okay, I met a Greg when we were at CEO, right? Different Greg. Okay.
Yeah, it's a different Greg. But this guy, he was actually better than me in Articanus, so I wish he kept playing. He was the fastest to pick up all the tech skill and stuff.
Nice.
And we were always like, we're gonna, But being the chief youngsters, I think we had better tech skill than almost everyone at the time because all we did was practice.
hmm
So
Gotcha. So you've been playing competitively essentially since like 2004 or 5. That's nuts.
Yep,
How many years is
over
that?
half my life.
14? That's insane.
Over
That's
half my
super
life.
cool. So that entire time you were essentially competing, right? Probably taking some breaks in between, right?
Well, I didn't get to go to tournaments for real until 2010 because everything was 4 hours away. I think I literally went to the two tournaments I told you about. I went to 2 Florida. So I went to a total of 4 tournaments between 2004 and 2010.
That's insanity. Wow.
And that's all I had to go with.
Wow. Did Georgia just not have like a scene or an established like tournament
I just
series back
couldn't
then?
go because I couldn't drive.
Yeah.
My parents weren't going to drive me 4 hours, which is, pretty reasonable.
Definitely. Yeah. Luckily, I had a 12-year-old brother who got me into the game, so he had a car, and so we got to travel
Oh, is that
together.
how you went to tournaments and stuff?
Yes, yeah. So
That's
my
actually
first
sick.
tournament was also an anime convention. It was just a joke, but
You still went, though.
yeah, exactly. But you've at least been into Melee since 2005 or 2004.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, after competing for so long, what has the transition been like from competitor to a coach or like a teacher?
I'd say it's been very natural because my whole life I've just been the teacher type of person.
Hmm.
Everything from like, if I'm in school, I would teach my peers how to do math to like when I was teaching like people how to play Melee. Like I've always taught people, so
Hmm.
it's kind of the same thing for me. Honestly, it probably fits my personality type better than competition does.
Right.
I think I'm an extremely competitive person, but I'm not a very results-oriented person.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Definitely.
Like I don't like losing. I want to be better than the next guy, but I don't care about the number. I don't care about the result, and that kind of matters for Melee.
It definitely does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where, like the top 5 placers are the people that are making money and are able to sustain actually playing it.
That's literally what the whole point is. Like, I didn't care about tournaments, but it's like you got to be top 5 if you want to make bank, right?
Exactly. But that's cool. I'm similar myself, and you know this, but it's just like we both teach so many people. I went to college for education too, because it was something I was so passionate about. And it's cool to hear that it just was a natural kind of thing for you, and it's been nice.
I mean, I know you do the same thing, so it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's just easier, better, feels good to me. But you're in the midst of doing all the competition stuff right now.
Oh yeah, that's a whole thing.
I saw you were hype about your rank, right?
I was very hype about the rank, yeah. Well, I was
So-
surprised myself because my first like 3 months of the year or whatever were pretty good. I'd say they were maybe even like top 30 level. I was beating a lot of people. And then the last 2 months have been kind of lackluster, so I was really afraid of like recency bias just destroying me. Everyone's like, this kid sucks.
Oh,
He
yeah.
can't even beat, Zamu or whatever.
Yeah, like people. Also, chat's saying stuff about sounds. Is that my chair, you think?
No. So the bird sounds. Oh God, I could actually.
Oh, do you have like actual birds?
I have actual birds. Well, not in real life. My editor built in bird sounds to the background.
That's really funny.
Yeah, I'll turn them off for now since it seems like people are what facing. But
Bird.
good catch. But no, competition is nuts. Do you miss competition then as a competitor or as a coach now?
Absolutely. I mean, I like I said, I'm competitive. When I watch all these people play, it's kind of the thing where like everyone forgets how good people are. It's like what happened with PP, right?
Hmm.
People are like, oh, could PP even beat Zane now? And like, PP's sitting there like hello, like
This
it's
is
kind of the same thing, right? Where it's like, sure, people are getting better, but like I want to beat people. I want to show people how I think the game should be played.
Of course. It's really funny you mentioned the PP thing. That's actually what I ended the last podcast on. It was me,
How
Squid, and
so?
Bones, and we were like, Bones posed the question, do you think that PP could beat DizKid Boogie?
Yeah, right? Like,
Yeah, and it's like, why is this even a question? But, oh God, it's kind of scary to think about. But I can speak for, I think, the entire Melee community saying that we miss you. But is it just kind of like you don't have the time anymore then, since you're so busy giving lessons?
I'd say it's less the time, more of my desire is just not there
Gotcha.
because I don't like doing things half-assed ever. I mean, I think a lot of Melee players are like that. That's why we're here giving our all to Melee.
Most definitely.
I couldn't enter tournaments and just go have a good time
Hmm.
because I might be lucky in one tournament, and then if I go lose to like I don't know some matchup I haven't practiced for like some guy who's top 40, they're gonna be like, oh well, That's what happened the end of last year. I didn't try the end of 2017, which we've talked about, I think. So it's like, and then people start talking, and it's like, that's not really what I want.
Yeah,
So
and then people
I'll
talking
play
feels
when I
bad.
want to. Say what?
People talking feels bad too. It's like, you guys
Oh,
don't even know. I'm not even, I can't give it my all right now.
Yeah, people don't understand though, and they don't have to understand because it's like I'm not expecting everyone to know my personal life, your personal life, but
Mhm.
like I think there is a sense that people forget that we're all like human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something I've always noticed is like every top player, if you ask them, I bet you they have a story of every tournament. They can tell you what was going on in their life at that tournament. They're like, oh yeah, CEO 2016, that was the year, like, I don't know, my dad was in the hospital and I was too worried about that to focus on competing. But like, they don't know that,
That's such a good point.
But
yeah.
You understand.
I super understand. I have actually never thought of it like that, because it's like I almost, when people bring up like CEO Dreamland or something, I almost never talk about like the actual tournament experience first. Normally I'm like, oh yeah, I had this personal experience going on in my life at that time or something. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I remember that because we were talking about how the tournament was going for you, and it's like we're all people and we have these problems and stuff, and like I don't want to compete again until I feel like the only excuse is I wasn't good enough.
Or the other guy was better than you or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And God, what was I gonna say about that? I don't know, something. But so since you're a coach now, you're not competing. You do coach a lot of people that are all trying to beat each other. So I was wondering how many top 100 players you actually coach.
Okay, let me think. I'll just name them all.
Yeah, you can name them. I don't think they care.
Yeah, I don't think anyone cares. So Face Roll, Duck, Swedish, Smuckers, and is that it right now? A lot of it's like rotations. Like I've taught other people. Like at one point, I gave lessons to Connor a bunch when he was playing more. I gave lessons to Hugs. I feel like Spark. Yeah, I gave lessons to Spark.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's like a solid maybe 8 to 10 I've had lessons with in the last like 4 or 5 months.
That's really awesome. And then this is something that I do know the answer to, but it blew my mind. I was like, how new is the average person that you actually give lessons to?
Oh yeah, we talked about this at this CEO, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so you already know, but for everyone else, most of the players I give lessons to have only been playing 1 to 2 years. And a couple even, I've had students that have only been playing for like 5 or 6 months even. What do you think of that?
What do I think of it? So it surprised me at first, because I know that like lessons with you are pretty limited. Not entirely limited. You give so many lessons, but I thought, who understands the value of Druggedfox lessons more than anybody else? It's the people who are already solidified in the game but just need to know a little bit more. But I guess like the interest was really in the people that I guess wanted to have a solid foundation moving forward, which I think is excellent. I think that's the best way to go about it. But I didn't expect the general new person in the Melee community to kind of recognize that before building 4 years of bad habits.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
that's how we've all gone about it.
Yeah, it's like exactly what you said. It's a great sign that there are people who like want to build their foundation properly. And I'm excited about that. Like I think I told you this, but maybe people will be interested to know. My first 2 to 3 months of lessons with almost every student is like very similar, and it's just teaching them like how to react, how to make decisions. And then now like all my students can probably give lecture after lecture about it because they've heard me do it so many times.
Yeah, that's so sick. I mean, I do the same thing when I don't really like give lessons, but I talk about Melee a lot on my stream and stuff like that. And the amount of times I've said like reaction or situational awareness or something like that, I've said these phrases so many times that I'm sure the people that regularly tune in could easily tell somebody else about it.
Like they could give the analysis for you at this point.
That's what you try to build into your students, right? That's the whole goal. So that's excellent. And then I was also wondering, your lessons must look different for a person that's only been playing from 1 to 2 years, as opposed to, Duck, who's been playing since, 2009 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess a more interesting question is, where's the overlap? Do you guys talk about similar things with the newer person and the more experienced?
It depends a lot on the player. Easy example is I gave Swedish and Smuckers the same lesson on how to practice ledge mechanics that I gave to my completely new students. I think I've had a lot of experience in how to practice things. So I explained like how I use 20XX, what I look for, etc. But then where it deviates is maybe like I don't need to talk to Duck about whether or not a decision was good. I'll just be like, I'll literally just say, like, if I'm talking to Duck, I'll just say something along the lines of, like, what do you think of that? And then he'll either be like, yeah, that was bad and we can keep going and I don't have to talk about why. Or he'll be like, well, and then we might talk about it. But with my newer students, I really have to do a good job deciding what's important.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time I give a lesson to someone, I'll watch 2 stocks of their gameplay without even commenting a single time, just so I can have a sense of, okay, well, obviously they're going to be bad at 50 things, but maybe only these 3 things matter, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always when I do analysis myself, it's like I try to watch the set beforehand and I really pick out the big things. Why did you lose the stock? Why did you get the big opening? And was it random and you got lucky because you were just spamming a mix-up, or did you really have an informed decision, which I think is really important. I don't think that enough players have informed decisions, and I know that they get that through your lessons.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everyone listening, remember what Avery just said. I think one of the biggest rules of Melee is why you lost your stock, how you took their stock.
Mm-hmm.
If that's like one thing if you wanted like one piece of advice to tell the whole world, I would literally say, figure out how you lose your stocks and figure out how you're taking their stocks.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone definitely listen to what Avery just said.
And it's really cool. I don't know. I'm sure you've had so many discussions with so many top players, but one of something that comes to mind when I'm talking about people remembering why they took a stock or how they lost a stock is actually Ryan Ford. I don't know if you've talked to him. He can remember, like, I was playing Dr. Mario against West Balls and on the left side of Pokemon Stadium, like in 2005.
Yeah.
It's crazy that guy's brain, but it's so good for actually being able to like analyze the game within your head and be able to make an informed decision for next time. All that stuff matters so much.
It's huge because I mean, this is one of the general topics I think is worth teaching like a player of any skill level is like the value of being able to remember things. Because even if you could have every set ever recorded, are you really going to watch like if you play 3 hours of friendlies, you don't have time to watch 3 hours of VODs.
Mm-hmm.
You have time to watch 10 minutes of VODs. So being able to remember things is just huge.
Mm-hmm. How does that usually work for you? Like when you were a competitor trying to get better, was it that you would specifically watch a lot of your VODs, or like something like for me, I just have a really good Melee memory. I can bring back that last 3 hour of time and I can think about what the problems were. Is that kind of similar to you, or do you have to go back and watch?
Absolutely similar. My explanation is when I was, in Savannah learning the game pretty much by myself, I realized one day, man, I can't remember what happened. So I would literally pull up videos and just watch the video purely for the purpose of trying to remember the interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I was like, man, it's pretty bad that I don't remember this.
Mm-hmm.
But even if I was smart, you have to teach yourself these things. These aren't like things you can just be like, oh, I'm good at it, I'm bad at it. It's like, no, I studied how to remember,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very similar for me. What happened to me? So I've been playing competitively since I was super little, like literally going to tournaments and tech skill and all that. I was the most scatterbrained little kid, and the joke was like the running joke in my house was I couldn't even remember what stage we played on last. So it's just like if I can't remember that, like how am I supposed to remember any meaningful interactions or learn anything from it? So that was a big deal to me. So I really made it a goal to be mindful and present while playing, which I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That leads to being present during tournament matches is something I struggled with for a very long time.
Really?
Yeah, if I can talk about that for a second.
Most definitely.
So the concept of being present and mindful is really different as a learner versus as a competitor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm ultimately a friendlies player. I play purely to learn, right? And the reason that gets me is because, for example, my classic example is let's say someone's on a platform shielding and you're on the ground and you see them spot dodge. They meant to shield drop, right?
I bring this up in my stream all the time because you've told me the story, but please keep going.
Oh, yeah, okay. So you do talk about this, which is great.
Yes.
Armada sees them spot dodge on the platform. 0% of his brain power is thinking he meant to shield drop. Mm-hmm. For me, 80% of my brain power is thinking he meant to shield drop. And that's great for learning. It's great for thinking about intentions. But when I'm in a tournament match, that's pretty much the worst thing possible. So especially in 2017, people are like, why'd you do so much better? It's like, okay, well, I decided to focus on the things that win me tournament matches and not on the things that, to me, make me better at Melee.
Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting that you mentioned that. I'm actually going to go to the next question, which was, like, what are some of the pros and cons you see within competitive play? Because that kind of bleeds over into that. Because it really might not be the best learning experience, right? That might be a con.
Yeah, I mean, I find that really funny because this totally leads in perfectly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the good part about having a really competitive play to win mindset and practicing that is, you'll be better at winning, which is ultimately most people's goal.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like it blinds you from so many things, and it's why like a lot of tournament melee to me is very ugly. And a lot of people can say like, "Oh, everyone's just playing bad today," or they're choking. It's like, well, no, because when you get in the moment you want to win, you're gonna spam something that's kind of hard to beat. And
Uh-huh.
honestly, I also think it takes accountability away because if you kind of know that what you're doing isn't what you truly believe is best, then if you lose while doing it, you won't care as much, right?
Mm-hmm.
While if you're trying to do your absolute best to win in every decision, you do what you think is right. One, you might mess it up, and that sucks. And then two, if they beat it, there's nothing besides holding yourself accountable, which isn't really something everyone's comfortable with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Going along with that too, isn't it? It sucks though, right? Because it's like a contradiction almost. It's like if you want to win, you have to learn, but in order to win in the moment, you can't have a learning mindset. So it's
Yep.
like, God,
It's so hard. It's
it's
just
really hard.
impossibly hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
We're
that's
all. I feel like it kind of defines all of melee. It's like we're trying to find the balance between whatever it is we're working on. Right.
hmm most definitely. I feel like, God, I wish Melee wasn't so complex. You could probably just, God, it's just the hardest game of all time. It frustrates me
It
sometimes.
literally is. It really is.
And something too that I was just remembering from a little bit earlier, we were talking about how they're like you can talk about moments of your life that were happening during tournaments and how that affected your results. It's like Melee is it feels truly like a reflection of yourself and your emotions and how you process and learn. And I personally think that's really cool, and I haven't experienced that with any other games. Do you feel like that's kind of a Melee only type of thing, or have you experienced that? Because I know you've played other games at a pretty high level.
No, I feel like I've experienced it in other things. I guess. I mean, I agree. It's super, super important to me, though. I mean, I wouldn't. That's probably why we all got hooked on melee, right?
hmm
Um, yeah, I'm just thinking about it. It's just insane to be able to express yourself in that way. And I think the tricky thing is you don't really get to see that until you get good enough, kind of.
hmm
Because I don't think 1 year into melee it was a reflection of my personality.
Yeah.
But as I became like a competitor and I learned what values I had, it's like I guarantee you, anyone when I play people, it's like I can see their personality in their gameplay.
hmm
Like absolutely.
I always bring up Dreffen when I think about personalities in Melee. He's such this little quirky guy who's like kind of scatterbrained and like his chic is just very quirky and it's like oh my you could just see a reflection. And also I feel like you can tell by the way people learn and within their personalities like that how driven they are and stuff like that. Like for example, KJH, who I know is in the chat, and he's watching. He's a real perfectionist, and he really grinds the game and enjoys learning. And like, what's really fun for him is the grind of getting something perfect 10 times in a row. And you can see that when you see him play in tournament against somebody. It's like there's those little tiny things that he does that really nobody
He
else
gets
does.
them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what other games have you played at a top level? I know about Marvel, but I don't know about any others if there are any.
I can tell you all the games I've played at varying levels.
hmm
I've played. So along with picking up Melee, I picked up Pokemon when I was fairly young. I was definitely a top player in that. I mean,
Really?
I mostly played the. Do you know anything about Pokemon
I
tiers and
do.
stuff?
I do.
Okay, yeah, I mostly played Ubers in Gen 4. I learned the game in Gen 3. In Ubers, all the people that played on like battle simulators like Shoddy and Net Battle and like Pokemon Showdown and stuff,
hmm
all the top players knew me as like a top 5 of all time Ubers player.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and I wrote like a third of the meta for Ubers,
That's
honestly.
so cool.
Yeah. So Pokemon was huge. OU I was really good too, but like there's so many people that play OU and Pokemon kind of doesn't have that high a skill cap that it's like here's 100 players who are all probably like S tier players.
hmm
Not as many people play Ubers.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember OU being, I think, the largest kind of
yeah,
genre of
absolutely.
whatever.
And then I've played Marvel, Marvel 3. I love that game. Love it to death. Still one of my favorite games of all time.
Was Marvel 3 the Marvel that you started with?
I played Marvel 2 very casually,
Okay.
but I've watched. So something funny I didn't really realize until the last couple of years is that I played fighting games casually almost my whole life. And I didn't really realize that somehow. They've just always been. I played Soul Calibur casually. I played BlazBlue casually. I played Street Fighter casually. I played Marvel casually. I guess I like fighting games.
That's
but
awesome.
I didn't really like, no.
Right, you didn't go and seek out fighting games. You were just trying to have fun with video games.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I played all of them. I played Marvel 2 casually. Played Marvel 3 competitively. I played Marvel Infinite competitively when it came out. Rest in peace, that game. I've played Melty Blood competitively. I was pretty good at that. I don't know how good because Japan's the actual good country.
Okay.
So like no one in America is actually good. So it's kind of hard to say I'm good, but within America I was decent.
That's cool.
One of my best friends who I actually helped make SD Remix with was probably the best player in the Western Hemisphere for a while, and he was my training buddy. So I think I beat him in one first to 10 set ever.
That's
so
awesome,
like,
though.
It's like I'm not that, but like I wasn't like super good. I've played more games too, but you get the idea. I played a ton.
Do you think that Marvel was the one that you were kind of best at outside of Melee?
I think Pokemon was the game I was best at.
Oh, honestly. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's kind of weird. Like, I always tell people, I think until 2017, Melee was the game that I truly believed I was the worst at in terms of statistic comparison. Like, I didn't get in trouble for Marvel 3, but I thought that relative to the current skill level of the game, I thought I was better at that game than I was at Melee.
That's crazy.
Even though Melee is like, it's just harder to me, right? But yeah, that's how I personally felt.
And something I always bring up when I talk about you playing Marvel is you beat Chris G, right?
Yeah.
Is that the legendary set?
It was pretty not legendary because I told everyone I was going to win before it happened.
Wow. Oh my god.
It was funny. Do you know what I mean in Melee where like you've seen someone play, you know how they play, you know how you play, and you're like, I'm going to win. And then you go and you win, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's something you've certainly felt before in Melee.
Sammy, I feel so bad. I'm actually going to bring it up because it's funny. When I beat you at Big House 5, I made a Facebook post 2 weeks before.
And you were like, I'm going to beat Druggedfox.
I said I was going to beat Druggedfox. Everyone laughed at me.
I mean, that's how it works. Like, you can, like, the game's not a mystery, right?
Right. I mean,
people
this is a question too, just because I was thinking about it. Do you feel as though, because I think that a lot of top players don't wait, watch, and react and make informed decisions in the game. I think that there are other ways of playing and actually being effective. I think a lot of top players do that. Do you feel as though there are like certain habits that counter other habits? Like some players just beat other players, and I don't think it's because they're watching them and understanding what they're doing. I think that they're just going to go through the motions and achieve the victory regardless.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, unless someone's very consciously working on having a very, like all-around play style or whatever, a lot of Melee is just like, most games are just luck at the end of the day in the sense that it's like, yeah, this is you, this is me, we're going to roll some dice and see what happens. And like, based on the habits, it'll be like weight in your favor, right?
Right.
I think that 100% matches what you said. I don't think that's cool though. What I think is way cooler is like pushing past that. Right?
I agree. Yeah, but that's something interesting too. This is a question that I brought up on my last podcast. We were talking about why the gods were so consistent. When it seems like you slap two people against each other and you can make some informed decisions, sure, but there are habits built in, and these people have been playing for 12 years of their lives or something. So. But they don't lose. Mango doesn't lose to Crush. Armada doesn't lose to Falcons. Like, it just doesn't happen. And, like, I'm wondering if you can provide some insight on why you think they're able to be so consistent in a game that seems to have so many variables.
I mean, that's one of the cool things about Melee, and I think you touched on it a bit earlier, and it's largely about situational awareness. And Melee also has a unique combination of situational awareness is absurdly important, and being able to build a game plan can be done in so many ways. And if you build your game plan well enough, it can account for like X number of players, right? So between the ridiculous amount of situational awareness required. And I mean, who do you think is more aware in Peach Falcon, Armada or anyone else in the world, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like being aware in every single moment is what allows Melee. I think one thing that makes Melee so unique is what you said. It's like two players, Melee is absurdly high variance at the same skill level. But if one person is even like one skill tier better, you can't even win a game anymore.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And it's because if I can be that little bit more aware and my game plan's a little bit more put together, you just will not be able to touch me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something very unique to Melee, in my opinion. At least compared to other fighting games. I don't know in other games, but
right. When you said that, actually, what I thought of is how similar it was to human evolution. I was thinking like we're so genetically similar to gorillas, but like gorillas can't do physics, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we're so close to them in skill level, if we're talking in Melee terms, but at the same time we're just so much farther above them, and they would never beat us in a science off, right? So, but
just maybe in a wrestling match.
Yeah, probably a wrestling match. Good point. So
No,
with
I mean,
that,
you're right.
yeah. So with that, I was wondering who you thought played the closest to your idea of optimal right now. If there's nobody really, you can be honest about that too.
Yeah, nobody at all, honestly.
Yeah.
People have flashes of it, I think. I've seen Plup play sometimes and thought Plup was playing, you know, he really, I think I've seen all the gods play before. Let me think before I say that for sure.
Yeah, of course, of course.
I think I've seen all the gods except Mewtwo King play in a way before that was very impressive to me.
Mm-hmm.
Usually in particular matchups that they feel comfortable with. The kind of problem is most gods are very suboptimal in the small things or whatever, but they're very good at everything else. So it's like, you know, I can't watch Mango and be like, yeah, he ledge dashed every time he grabbed the ledge ever. But like, I'm gonna try not to nitpick too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But honestly, I don't think most people even try to play optimally is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the real crux of it. There's so few people that are legitimately trying to play optimally. Mm-hmm. People are just trying to play like the way they feel is best for them.
Yeah. Man, I'm trying to think back to where this conversation happened. I think it was when I was in Atlanta for DreamHack.
Okay.
And because what I thought the answer might have been when I asked you this question about who's the most optimal right now, you would say Armada. But I remember we had a discussion about how about screen looking and all that, and you were like, I actually don't think that Armada's a screen looker. Then I was like, if he's not a screen looker, he can't be Sammy's idea of optimal, I don't think. But
I think Armada's the closest the most often because of how good his game plans are. By the way, funny story. Do you remember when I was tweeting that Peach is the least optimized character?
Yeah.
And Armada got mad at me, of course.
I saw
that. And Armada made a comment that I do agree with, that he said a lot of optimization happens with game plans. And he thinks he has created the Peach game plan more than anyone has done for any other character.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that, honestly.
It's hard to disagree.
Yeah. I think Armada with Peach is the closest in terms of game plan and correctness and playing every matchup well, more closer than anyone's achieved with other characters probably. Mm-hmm. But I still wouldn't call it very optimal, you know. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of weird.
Yeah, Duck talks about how he invented every matchup with Samus too.
That's funny.
Yeah, Duck is silly. But maybe we could talk about that too for a little bit. Could we go into the concept of like screen looking? Because I mention it on my stream all the time, and I say Sammy says this, but I have you here, so.
That's funny. Yeah, screen looking. I mean, it's like how much are you looking at the nuance of the situation and making your decision based off that information, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I would say Armada or lots of people aren't screen lookers is because the Armada's strength is largely that he has a game plan that he's practiced a billion times, and that game plan comes down to even small situations, and he's not very flexible in those. Even if there's a clear path that could be a better solution, and someone of his skill could probably figure it out, the mental energy required to do that will probably make you less consistent in other ways, right? One comparison I always like to make is that when I play tournament matches, my opponent messes up, and that causes me to die. And versus Armada, the opponent will make a mistake that absolutely should not cost them, and Armada will find a way to kill them off of it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's because Armada's putting 1,000% of his energy into making that one decision the way he's looking for it, exactly how he's looking for it. Mm-hmm. Which means that if things happen not the way he's looking for it, he's less likely to be adaptive to it.
Right. Which
is better for tournament play, but I don't think it's very good for pushing the game as far as it can be pushed.
Yeah, if we're talking in terms of optimal. I know I brought this example up to you recently, but I think about it probably almost every day, honestly, is when you played against Hungrybox. You played against Hungrybox, you were knocked down in the corner, and you woke up, and everybody and their mother freaking rolls there, and you just run up and up smash him. And I feel like that's a screen looker type of decision, right?
Oh yeah.
That's
it depends how you interpret it. It could be a non-screen looker decision too, depending on, right? So yeah. Why is it a screen looker decision? You should tell everyone.
So, I mean, it might be a screen looker decision. I don't know previously in that match if you had already gotten hit by potentially like you rolled in and got rested, or if he just punished you regardless. You hadn't done that before, but you understood that was something that Hungrybox likes to look for, especially when you're in the corner, right? And Hungrybox is the type of player who likes to make smart, safe, informed decisions, so he's not going to push that far into the corner, especially when he doesn't have to. And so you're looking and you say, okay, if he's just going to stand there, quickly weigh risk reward, I have this read on him, so I'm going to execute what I think would punish him best, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it a screen looker decision. So what I'm going to say is there are ways this can become a non-screen looking decision. Okay. A great way it can become that is once something becomes habitual, you don't think about it, right? Mm-hmm. So what if, for some people, they spot dodge on wake up every time? Some people, they roll on wake up every time. What if I, without looking at all, mix up run up, smash, roll, and spot dodge every time, right? So I can become a player who, without even thinking about it, just mixes up between those things, right? I can't hear you. Wait.
I unplugged my mic a little bit. I'm sorry. I should be back, right?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, excellent. Sorry.
Does that make sense, though?
It makes a lot of sense, most definitely.
So, and funnily enough, I think that's kind of the goal with Melee is that you eventually learn to take things that you normally have to think about and then not have to think about them. So the reason I think it stands out as a screen-looking decision is because no player in the history of Melee, as far as I know, has just up smash Hungrybox. Mm-hmm. The reason it can become not a screen-looking decision is because as everyone learns to study, all these new players, hopefully someone will see that and understand that this is a thing I should do without necessarily having all the understanding that I did, and then it just becomes a part of the metagame. Right. That's kind of what the metagame is, right?
Yes. I have an interesting question. Do you think it's worthwhile to have that understanding, or does it just not matter in terms of competitive Melee?
Unfortunately, I think it doesn't matter.
Ouch.
But, it matters to me, right?
Right.
And that's kind of the cool thing is that we all get to value different things. And as a player, I would never be happy not understanding those things, and it wouldn't make me happy. But
I think that's actually a good trait to have in terms of just competitiveness too, in its own way, because it'll have you seeking out what's new in the meta and thinking about the game on your own terms as well, instead of having to copy other people, right?
I mean, I agree with you entirely. I think that's huge. And like I said, that's why I try not to judge that type of thing, because it has a lot of value, right? Mm-hmm. Who am I to say that that's bad or wrong? But to me, I think it's pretty uninspiring to not really have that understanding. But, if your goal is to be, maybe you consider it inspiring to learn as fast as possible and get the results. So, people value different things. But for me personally, definitely not, which I'm sure you know.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting because I'm decently similar, but something I did when I was on the come up and learning the game, and when I was trying to kind of put myself in a process where I'd be able to learn very quickly and get good results at the same time, is it's like I always say that I stole things from certain players. Sure. Like my punish game, I watched Mango and Westballs, right, and Zoo. But what I would do to be mindful and also think about the situation a little bit more, because I'm thirsty for knowledge, right, is I would pause it when Westballs would get a shine, and I would think, what is he going to do? And what could happen in this situation? And then I would watch what he did and think, was that the best thing to do? Could I have done something better on reaction? Could my opponent have reacted with DI to any of the other options, and how does that affect the scenario too? And a lot of times, I actually notice that people aren't really playing that optimally, and there's a lot of room for improvement, which is something that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you entirely. And I think what you just described is something people should be doing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think the reason I asked that last question was because I think now more than ever, it's just easier to watch high level melee, practice your tech skill, copy the KJH platform follow ups, and then profit. I don't know, right? You can
Yeah,
probably
profit,
win
right?
your
Like
locals
the
by
question
doing
mark,
that.
you know what I mean? As like step 3, question mark. Step
Yeah.
4, profit.
Exactly. But because I consider that, and I think you kind of feel the same way, it's kind of sad. But I mean, I think that has to happen. Once the meta gets more and more fleshed out, that's going to happen.
Yep. It has
But
to happen to some extent.
yeah.
It's how you learn it first, for sure.
hmm
But if that's just all you've got, then, it's just kind of whatever.
hmm The cool thing about Melee though is I feel like it still has so much room to grow.
Oh,
That it's like you can copy all these things, but players can adapt to you. There are still somehow more new things that you should be doing or should have done in those situations. And if you haven't built in that kind of foundation, and if you're not the type of person that's thirsty for knowledge, you're going to have a hard time progressing in the meta uh, if the people that you're just trying to copy aren't, right? Like, let's say KJH quits the game, no more follow ups for you. Are you
what do
going
you
to
do?
be able to figure out the punish game? Maybe,
Yep.
maybe not.
Maybe not. Something funny I think about that, and it's related to the gods. This kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. One thing I don't like about the gods, but that they can do, is they don't have to push the game because they're already ahead. So because they know so much, something new will get figured out, and they can just add that one new thing, and oh, I'm up to date now, right?
I know it.
So that's something I wanted to point out, that take someone like Armada or Mewtwo King. If they don't push their game at all, they're still better than everyone. And even if a couple new metagame things get figured out, it's so easy to implement one or two new things than to be the person constantly pushing it. So they've pushed amazingly. I mean, they pretty much invented half the shit they do, which is what makes them so cool. But then the part that's sad to me is that I know how much potential they have to keep pushing, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. The gods are so fascinating. Like I could probably talk about them forever. Cause you look at winter semis of every tournament and you know who's gonna be there. Oh my god! And it's exactly what you said. How they're just like that little bit better than everybody. And let's say like somebody pushes the meta just that much more, kind of on their level, and they're able to adopt it so quickly. Oh my god.
Yep. It's so easy to just cycle what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, players started overshooting more. I guess I'll just do this. Problem
Right.
solved for the next 4 months.
But that is cool, just like you said. It's so cool about the gods that they're able to do that. Because I feel like a lot of people would get stuck. So many people hit plateaus and can't think critically about the game. So what happens is, someone starts overshooting and
It's over.
it's over. You lose. Good games.
Yep.
Yeah, but not for them. They're driven to win, which is something that's really, really
Yeah, I
cool.
mean, they're incredible in every way still. It's just, I just get sad because I know how much more they can do because they're so amazing.
Yeah. Hopefully they start getting lessons from you then, huh?
We'll see.
Yeah. I can't imagine if Sami started working with a god. Oh my god, they'd get better than everybody else in the world.
It'll be over for someone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Have you ever worked with Plup? Just a quick question, because I know you guys live kind of close together, and I know that you taught Wizrobe a lot about the game. So
I think me and Plup collectively taught Wizzy how to play Melee pretty much.
that's cool.
Which between having Plup and Druggedfox T2, you're probably going to be pretty good.
I would imagine, yeah.
Plup, when we both switched to Sheik around the same time, we used to talk a lot about Sheik.
Okay.
But since then, not really.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say a lot of the things I developed with Sheik and a lot of the things he developed with Sheik were probably a product of us talking. And I think if you look at our VODs around late 2015, we actually play really similarly.
That's almost why I asked the question, because I remember when you made your blog post about Sheik, and I was just like, that is so cool. I think he's right about everything that he's saying. Druggedfox is a genius. And then you started to get really good results with Sheik, and you started to really innovate and punish really hard and do a lot of cool stuff. And the only person I really saw take it to that level near the same time as you was Plup when he switched to Sheik. And I remember thinking when he switched to switch off of Samus, I was so sad. And then I was like, wait, he's doing all the cool Druggedfox stuff. Like this is really cool. And it's awesome to know that it wasn't just like, you guys both came up with the ideas kind of at the same time, but you were actually talking about it too.
Yeah, we definitely talked. Not like a crazy amount, but like when we talked, we both would be like, yeah, how on earth do we play neutral versus Fox? Like that's a conversation I've had. We've been like, yeah, it feels like because I can 3-stock someone and still feel like that didn't feel that good. It felt like I was taking all the wrong risks. It felt like it shouldn't have worked. And then I'll go tell him that, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. I've been playing Colin every week, and sometimes he just runs me over, and we work through that. Also, shout out to the other Sheik that I think is worth noting. That's Flash.
Ooh.
Who everyone forgets all the time.
I forgot, yeah.
But I think he had the right idea too. And
That's
he's
interesting. I didn't watch enough of his VODs. I watched one full tournament where he made it to like Winterside Grand Finals and like beat SFAT in a set or something.
So you watched the second Foundry, I think.
Yeah, I think it was a Foundry. Yeah, but he was so cool. I just remember, so I have this thing when I listen to commentators, I just normally don't believe whatever they're saying. And so and so whenever I was hearing the commentators be like, Flash is so cool, man. He's doing so much cool stuff. He's like innovating. I'm like, they probably just see him doing like weak back air at a fair, and they're just like, oh wow, he's so cool. So I don't think I gave him a real chance, but that's a really good shout out there.
He had the right ideas. He learned quickly. I remember seeing him do things and being like, oh, that was I hadn't thought of that before, which is pretty rare. I think it's rare that I'm watching Melee and being like, wow, I've literally never thought of that thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really cool. I feel like and I know that you've actually talked about this. It's funny that I want to bring it up. Is how the Japanese players actually play Melee.
Oh
it's
they're
interesting,
like
right?
my favorite. What's up?
It's interesting, right?
Oh yeah, it's so cool. I love it.
Like I don't even know how to describe it. They're just like they obviously have a different culture of learning than we do. It's bonkers. But we talked a little bit about switching off of characters for Plup, somebody that's been successful with multiple characters, and so were you. And I think I know a little bit of why you switched characters so often, but maybe even just telling the people, because I think it blows people's minds. I don't think they can wrap their head around it that you were on pace to be easily top 10 in the world with Sheik, I think I can say. And then you were just like, nope, I'm done playing Sheik, guys. So could you go just tell me a little bit about the motivations behind that?
Yeah. It depends if people want to believe me or not. And I've actually talked to people who just don't believe me. And it's just I didn't care about winning that much. I've said that to top players before, and they just didn't believe it because they care about winning so much. But I care about, as corny as it sounds, I care about like my principles, my ideals, what makes me happy. I care about having fun. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm playing Melee for the sake of Melee is how I would describe it. It's like I want to bring, and so with Sheik, for example, I can talk about why I quit Sheik. There's 2 reasons. One of them related to losing, one of them related to winning. Everyone knows I lost to Silent Wolf a bunch, and everyone's like, oh, that's the tournament you quit Sheik. And yeah, it feels really shitty to outplay someone and then get second place shine. Right? Like, that feels shitty. But it also feels shitty that at Tipped Off 11, the tournament where I lost to Drunk Sloth round 1 and then won the entire tournament, that was the first tournament ever with Sheik where I was like, fuck it. I give up on playing the way I think is right. I'm just going to do the things that I think that are going to beat these people because they're all noobs, and I'm just going to do what I think will win. And I won that tournament.
Right.
So when I win one tournament, giving up how I feel I should be playing, and it was easier than ever, and I beat everyone pretty solidly, and I was like, okay, cool, I won, I guess. And then I go try to play how I want, and I lose crushingly. I'm like, well, I didn't have the heart for it anymore. I was like, this is too hard for me. And then my hand stopped hurting as much because I hadn't played Fox for a year, and I was like, oh, I'll play Falco, actually. And, but pretty much every time I switch, it's because a character seems more fun. That's really it. Right. It's just fun.
And that's something we talked about recently, too, when we were at CEO, is I was talking about what motivates me as a player and what I like out of competition, and you were like, you should really try to just directly beat what your opponent's doing. And you said you might think that would be fun for me, and it has been.
Oh, so you've been trying it?
I've been doing it quite a bit.
How have you felt about it? I'm curious.
So I've been playing against this player who essentially does the same thing. I don't know if you know who Morse Code is. So Morse Code, Samus player, but he just goes for hard reads every time. And you'll hear Duck say that everything he does is a hard read or something, but
He actually
yeah, Morse is like literally, I think that you're gonna do this really specific thing, and I'm gonna do this specific thing to beat it, which is also what I'm trying to do. So we're both just trying to read each other like that, and it's been really enjoyable. And I've also been destroying him because I'm better at reading him than he is than me, which also feels good. But I think what you were kind of describing is that's not really the way that you like to play, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you segued perfectly into that. Yeah, it's not how I like to play. It's not what I believe is important about the game.
Right.
Like I said, I care a lot less about beating the opponent than I do, like, I would almost call it like beating Melee. My goal is to figure out how to play Melee the best way that could ever possibly be played. And that doesn't really involve knowing what your opponent's going to do. Now, that said, I think if anyone's ever seen me play, they see me go for a ton of ridiculous reads that, honestly, I probably shouldn't go for. I mean, I do a ton of what I call really stupid-ass reads. Like, people don't really get it because people define aesthetics through things like your punish game. But, like, I feel very close to Mango in the sense that, like Mango described it best. When I was at SSS, and I beat a bunch of people up, and he commentated. He's like, I don't get Druggedfox. He's like the biggest nerd ever, but he's not going for any nerdy reads. He's like only going for big, hard reads. And it's like, I kind of have this duality, and I don't know what I want. And it's kind of tough. But at the end of the day, when I'm trying to get better, it never involves reading my opponent. Yeah. And I know you understand.
Yeah, of course. Just a quick question about that. What character do you think that you have the most fun with? Do you think that Fox is kind of the one? Because that's the one that you settled on before you kind of left playing competitively. So do you think that was kind of just the character that allowed you to have the most fun, or the character that you connected with most? Maybe something like that?
That's a good question, honestly. I feel like it probably just changes based on where I'm at in my life. 2017 Sami was probably Fox, but like, it'll always change. I don't really know. I think
gotcha.
I decided at some point that it probably wasn't Marth, and I think I decided it wasn't Falcon or Peach. I actually think it could be Peach if Melee stage list was different, which is something we've talked about.
Really?
We talked about like stage lists and timers and stuff?
We talked about stage lists and timers. I didn't know we talked about Peach. Did we?
We might not have talked about Peach, but it's all related. Where like I hate the Melee stage list because you can run away on all the stages, and then I hate the Melee timer because it encourages people not to interact. So I can't believe people can play floaties. Honestly, I'm impressed by them because like I just get bored. Like if you tell me to main Peach for 3 months or Samus for 3 months. It'll be fun for the first week, and then eventually I'm like, it's not fun playing. And Duck complains about this too. He's like, it's so annoying playing someone who you're better than and having them dictate the pace of the match. It's like, I'm getting camped for 5 minutes, and I will lose if I don't do it back. But I will 3-stock them eventually, you know, that whole thing.
Yeah, of course.
And it's incredible to me that they can do that. So that's impressive, but that's not something I value or have the stomach to do. So I think I could have made a floaty.
Right. I mean, you're telling this to a Falco player, so it's like all I like to do is be chasing my opponent. I like shooting a laser at him when he's far away. I like dictating the pace of the match.
Yeah, Falco's so good at that.
Exactly. So it's like I had this thing where I wanted to grind to number 1 on the net play ladder, only using Sheik, and I did it. But
you did.
I did it. But God, it was the most boring experience of my life. I can't. Sometimes I just can't hit them. Like, and Sheik is a decently fast character. It's not like I'm Peach.
Yeah. There's the spot that's above her and in front of her. That's fairly high up. It's kind of like where Falcon's full hop is, and she cannot hit there ever unless she's already positioned with backer. It's just impossible. Like, especially when I play Wizrobe, he does this a lot where he jumps up there, and I'm like, I know you're gonna jump there. I can't. And that's why Fox and Falco are fun, right? Because more than any other character, if they know what the opponent's gonna do, especially Fox, it doesn't matter. You just go beat it. And that's why, like, being the better player and playing Fox is more fun, usually. because you don't have to waste time dealing with their shenanigans. You just go beat whatever they're doing.
Most definitely. Man, should we talk about a matchup?
I'm down.
I don't
What
think
do you-
we got on the call. We didn't actually figure out what matchup we wanted to talk about. Should we take like a poll
poll?
from the chat?
If we can do a poll, I'm down.
Let's do Falco and something so that I
Yeah,
have
definitely Falco.
so I can seem like I know something. So everybody in the chat, name a character that isn't Falco, unless you want to do Falco Dittos. We could talk about Falco Dittos too. I see some Sheik, Falcon, Falco, Falco Marth, Falco Marth, Falco Marth. There's a lot of Sheik too, actually. Oh, geez, the Marth is really coming out. I think we have to talk about Falco versus Marth now.
Okay, I'm down.
I'm down too.
That's kind of what I was talking about anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know I'm down.
Okay, so where do we even start Falco versus Marth? We can talk about the implications of lasers, I guess, which I think, from at least the Falco standpoint, is probably the most important thing about the matchup in terms of like a general game plan. So I guess, what do you think are effective ways to use lasers, and what should you be trying to achieve out of lasers?
Before we talk about that, I actually remember something I've been thinking about lately that I wanted to bring up to you, and I wanted to know what you thought of it.
Please do.
So, as you know, I don't know if the chat knows, but I'm a huge fan of laser really, really fast and don't let them do things, because most of the reasons Falcos have historically gotten hit for lasers is because they don't know how to laser fast or they do movements.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one downside to lasering really fast is that you don't always get to set up the positions and spacings you want. It's like you're very safe, but you can't get into those spots where you can hit them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something I saw Mango do, and you can tell me if you thought about this much, and I think Mango's a big fan of lasering them so that they can't hit them, but he's really good at intentionally picking the laser timing to let them run forward and then end up closer to you.
Interesting.
So let's say you're spamming laser in place versus a fox, and you're like this far apart. He runs about to here and gets hit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you delay the laser by 3 frames, he gets to here, runs 3 more frames, and then gets hit. And there's no way he can meaningfully make a timing difference once he started running, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is that something you do at all, or you've thought about much?
Kind of just like my opponent's position relative to me when I choose my laser timing. Is that kind
like
of what you're...
essentially at a timing where you could shoot a laser for free and you know they're running in,
Mm-hmm.
waiting like 3 or 4 frames before shooting the laser to put them in a worse position.
That's so interesting. I haven't thought about that.
I hadn't thought about it. So I would be like, damn, I guess I'm slow on the uptake if you thought about it.
Yeah, right. No, that's a good idea.
I saw him playing IBDW, and he did this. Sorry, chat. This is super nerdy talk, but I saw him playing.
I'm sure they love it.
And he did this really cool thing on Stadium, and it was transforming. And he walked away, and it was very clearly a walk away with the intention of, if Fox full hops at me, I will back air him,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know the walk away where
Of
it's like,
course.
you're this close, you walk to here, he can't jump at you.
Uh-huh.
But he did this thing which I love, and it's one of the things I do a lot in my play, which is where you're looking for one thing, but if it doesn't happen by a certain time, then you assume it didn't happen and switch your decision. This is like a hallmark of the way I play Melee.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I'm looking for one thing, and then I switch my decision to something else because I can safely assume it didn't happen at the timing I was looking for. The way Mango did this is he did a walk away and then did turnaround laser.
Yeah.
And what happened is if IBDW had full hopped in at the normal timing, he would have got back aired. And then when he ran in, he got lasered like right next to Mango, but he couldn't have hit Mango. And it just got like, and I watched Mango more and I realized he does this a lot, actually.
That's super interesting. That is actually, I mean, you said it's a hallmark of your play. I do the exact same thing. I think probably the most common scenario, I could come up with a million where that happens, but I think like you knock somebody down over in the corner. Let's say you forward smash them across the stage and you shoot a laser to hit their wake up because you know that they're rolling over there and you can't hit them with anything else. And they're not on the ledge. So they wake up and I run to the like roll spacing, right? Which is like a pretty effective spot, especially if you have somebody in laser stun in the corner. Let's say it's a fox. And it's like, I know that you can't just jump at me and hit me without me being able to respond with something. So I'm standing here in this position and they wake up and they shield because I don't know why they shield, but this is Melee. This is the meta. Everyone wake up shields, I guess. And I wait for them to roll. And then if they don't, I choose an option after a certain period of time, right? I wait the normal roll timing And if something else happens after that, I know that they've made a conscious decision not to roll, or
Yep.
otherwise they would have just done it. So now I have to think, and I always have a backup plan in that situation, and I think, well, what are they going to do instead? And I actually don't think that most people, when they're sitting in the shield, have thought about what they're going to do instead most of the time.
That's why most people are easy to read, right?
Yes, exactly. So like I can choose to either laser, or what I'll do a lot of the times is just wave dash into center stage, and then I just like kind of force stage position, and then I feel like they're super off balance at that point, and it's like they really don't know what to do. And now I'm in center stage, they're being lasered again, and sometimes they'll choose the right option, but even then they have to work their way back into neutral.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
For sure.
but that's so interesting about Mango and the laser timings.
Yeah.
I never
So
thought
I've
about
been
doing that.
intentionally trying to shoot very slow. Like I still jump as fast as possible, or shoot the lasers quickly. But when I know they can't hit me, I've been just trying to do lasers slightly later, but not like a dash shield stop or something. Just literally waiting 4 or 5 frames or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been pretty interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And
Do
it's
you
also
feel like
worth
it's
noting-
actually? Do you feel like it's effective at having people move in to be closer to you? Like
Yes.
that has been happening.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's very cool, and it also helps me when they are trying to dash dance around and I'm approaching lasering. I'll do approaching laser, but I won't fast fall. I'll do short hop, latest possible laser. Not even like the high one, just like literally the latest one I can do without fast falling, and it just changes the spacing and timing completely.
Yeah, I actually do that laser a lot, but I didn't think about like the necessary like spacing implications that could come out of that. Because
Yeah.
I started doing that because Squid actually made like a post 2 years ago or something on Twitter about how short hop, like a dash forward short hop non-fast falling laser, can really mess with people that are trying to like dash back into the corner, because you get a lot closer to them because you're not fast falling, so your momentum carries you slightly farther.
People don't do that with aerials, and I did that with an aerial versus Articanus. If you do short hop, no fastball, aerial 3 frames before you hit the ground, it's insane how much it hits people.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Which is this is, I mean, of course, you probably know about the Sami Nair with Falco that everybody talks about. Dude, it gets brought up in my stream every day. Ginger, do you do the Sami Nair? How do you fast fall your Nairs, Ginger? Have you heard about the Sami Nair? Yes, guys, I've heard of it. I can do it. I do it. It's okay. But then I try to describe how it's a situational thing. I think it's really good when you've established that somebody is going to be shielding, or if you want to force frame advantage. There are certain times within tech chases where it's really good too, I think. But like closing the distance and not having to use an approaching laser, which might not yield as large a reward as an aerial, is a time where you can really do a dash in and do like a non-fast fallen aerial instead of just doing it as fast as possible. I think that too many people within Melee, not even just with that Nair or just with Falco, try to do things as fast as possible, which can trip a lot of people up. Super common. I don't even know why that's built into people. Like people jump out of hit stun as soon as possible, and that's just like a habit. Right?
Oh yeah. Okay, so I was reading that the double jump out of hit stun back in like I feel like 2011, 2012, and the only thing I could think is I wonder when it will become meta to read this. And I think around 2015 or something, I saw the first signs of people reading it ever, and I was like, we did it! Like we really like got to that point in the metagame, you know?
Oh, Kalindi and I have like invented a lot of stuff that we wait and see how long it's going to take for the meta to start doing it. God, I can't even remember. I just came up with a situation that I talked about in my stream recently where I was like, Kalindi, remember when we knew about this years ago and now people are doing it? It just blows my mind. But the reading double jump thing, the first instance I made a connection and thought I'm going to do that was when I saw PP play against Ryan Ford. I don't know if you've watched that set, but he hits him with a fair and then he just like does this double jump dare and you're like, PP, what are you?
Ryan Ford should not have double jump.
No, not in a million years. But it's still meta at this point, I guess, even for a top 50 player or whatever. And he just jumps straight into it and dies. And I thought there was no other way to kill him there unless he read the jump. I'm gonna start reading the jump. This is sick.
Yeah, and you do it, and it's great. And you kill people a lot.
Yes.
One that you and Kalindi knew that I didn't know for a while was DIing in on the Shine Dare off stage. Because like no matter how fast you do it, it just pushes you back on stage.
Right.
And I didn't know that, and I remember you guys were like, "Yeah, we know this," and I'm like, Why does no one do this then?
I never know. I see King Momo hit it with people the most. He just does Shine Dare still all the time, and he hits everybody with it, and it just infuriates me.
Yeah, because they can hold in and. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because the meta forever was everyone told you just hold out and you won't get shine dared. It's like, no, you can just hold in and not get shine dared.
Yeah, that gets a little kind of frustrating, but it's also cool to be ahead of the meta, kind of. But like,
Yeah.
the thing is with me, and I think the same thing with you, is I don't hold back information. I'm not just like, oh, I remember what it was. Clinty and I knew about SDIing lasers on the throws
Oh
for a
yeah,
long time.
of course.
And it's like, why are people not doing this? And I tweeted about it, right? Like, I'm trying to get foxes to do this more often. I'm not just keeping this a secret so I can keep landing up throw shine, but, and still, like, I don't want to call out any specific top player, but there are still top players that just don't do it. And it's not hard. You can do it on reaction. I don't get it.
And you don't even need good SDI inputs. You can just do like them randomly, and
Yep.
it's still pretty good.
I always just tell people ask me how to do it. I say I just wiggle my stick and then I hold up on the C stick.
Yep.
I have like, each laser does like 3 or 4 frames of hit lag. I can't remember. And there's like 2 or 3 of them. And it's like, oh my God, how are you not? I don't know. It blows my mind.
I understand for sure.
But at the same time, and something that's frustrating too, and something that I call practice partner conditioning, like multi-tournament conditioning or whatever. There's practice partner conditioning where I play against KJH all the time, who's a big innovator, or like the way I weigh risk reward against him should be different than how I weigh risk reward against a player that like SFAT that might not do the optimal punish all the time or something, right? So it's just hard going into a tournament set and being like, okay, well, I'm gonna do something that is probably suboptimal, but will work against my opponent for whatever reason.
And that's a decision you have to make.
It has to be a conscious decision, but like you were talking about earlier, building a game plan and all the different ways to do that, you can make it a conscious decision and put the mental effort in before the set even starts.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's also a skill to be able to implement that decision on the fly, even if you might be nervous or something, right? And again, just like you've been saying, it's something that you can train. So it all kind of comes back to that.
You can train everything, right?
Right.
And I think that's one of the things I wish people understood more. Like, people sometimes ask me how to get better at something, and I'm like, okay, well, you just do it. And they're like, but all this and this and this. I'm like, yeah, I did all those things too. I think sometimes people are wowed by like the amount of effort all of this took.
Mm-hmm.
And people, it's like the thing where it's like talking about talent and other stuff, and like we could talk about that all day. I mean, but at the end of the day, no matter how talented you are, people put in the work. There's not a top player who did not put in the work, right? So many of my answers to people are, yeah, I practiced that and that and that and that and that, and like the Peach float cancel aerials or whatever.
Yep.
I showed them on my stream once, and multiple Peach mains, including like the Kane and Ryo beat, were like, "Damn, you're pretty good at those. How'd you do it or whatever?" And I was like, "Oh, after I thought about it, I probably practiced Peach for about 30 hours this week." And they were like,
"Wow,
what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but guess who can do the aerials now?"
I had such a similar experience. I do my double lasers really low from the ledge. And I'm very proud of them. But someone came in my stream and was like, "How the heck do you do those?" And I was like, because he's like, "I can't seem to do it." And I was like, "Well, here's the thing, is that I practiced it for like 20 hours. like you know how long I just sat there and fucking did these lasers? Because the problem for me is I had never done claw grip for anything else. And so I was teaching myself how to use claw grip and like how to adjust my hand quickly, because I just kept killing myself, and it was something that was really unintuitive for me. But now I probably have the lowest lasers in the world, and I don't get hit by down tilting Sheik. It feels great.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I totally understand. Like, people don't understand that you have to put effort and time and focus into something if you actually want to achieve it, which seems like a simple solution, but something people want the shortcuts.
Yep. I think just the amount of effort it can take to get truly good at something is pretty ridiculous. So,
do you find it within your lessons that any of your students are looking for that quick answer?
I feel like most of them are kind of almost too timid to ask that at first. And I don't know if it's because I'm intimidating or because they just respect what I have to say, but like I haven't come across that very much.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I also think most of my students are extremely motivated though. I usually don't enjoy giving lessons to people if they're not motivated. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And like the way I give lessons is obviously different than the way you give lessons. So what happens to me is I'll be streaming and then people pop in my chat and they ask questions, which is usually how I give lessons. And people ask the common question, any tips? I've been losing to my local Sheik player. Any tips? And I'm like, there's no shortcut to beating a matchup. Like you have to put effort and focus and time in. There's nothing more to it, man.
Yeah, I agree strongly.
Yeah.
I think a big thing with that though, like you're saying, is that also you kind of have to decide what to put time into because there's so many things to learn. And just because you mentioned the low laser thing, I remember the last thing I learned claw for was when I do dash out of crouch. I think I was like the first player to really popularize it, right? I taught like Wizzy and Facial to do it, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool or whatever. But then I realized I was dashing out of crouch into grab in situations where up smash would kill.
Ooh, okay.
But my problem is I don't claw up JC up smash. I use tap jump. So doing dashing back and tap jump up smash, not reliable. So for like 6 months, I kept saying, I'm gonna learn it. And I don't know if I lost tournament sets, but I definitely like had more trouble than I should have. And then this was I actually have a link to this. I think. Let me find it real quick.
That's awesome. Please do.
Okay, check this out. I'll send it to chat too. Okay. This was my crowning usage of it. I remember people saw that, and I got several messages like, did you just do that? And I'm like, yeah, I just did that.
I'm going to be able to watch it, but I don't think I can put it up on the stream. Hopefully people can just check out the link. I'm really curious, though.
Yeah, I want you to check it out. For the guys who don't have it up. Yeah, I'm crouching, and I don't dash back. I do smash turn JC up smash, which is frame perfect. Because if I dash for more than one frame, I would dash, right? So it's 2 frame perfect inputs, right?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's crazy. I was just gonna say, I talk about this situation not a lot, but it comes up where the person is knocked down behind you and you're crouching, and I always tell people what you should do is regular get up right there because it's extremely hard to punish.
Yeah, it is really hard.
And I can't actually believe that you killed him for it because
no one else is gonna do that. I think I'm the only person in the world that's gonna do that.
I know. So it's like. Now I have to preface it and be like, well, don't do this against Druggedfox, but
do it against everyone else, yeah. Right. And yeah, Ryan Ford you, right? Because same as you, right? He was like, well, if I get up, I'm not gonna die. And I remember I was like, well, I practiced this, so like.
That's so.
And I remember when Gravy was talking about the smash box. He was like, yeah, I can consistent smash, turn, jump out of crouch because of the box. And I remember when I learned it on GameCube controller, I was like, guess what? I can do this on a GameCube controller, so.
I love that.
Yeah. It's like really gratifying to learn tech skill.
No, I agree. I think so too, it's crazy to me that some people don't practice their tech skill.
Yeah, right. I mean, not everyone likes tech skill, honestly.
That's true.
Which we both love it, so it's like.
I have this funny story where I might have even just told on my stream yesterday or something, but I was playing against KJH and consistently losing, and this was when I was like ranked 5th or 7th in my state or something. I wasn't like really good. Yeah, but I'd been able to get to the point in tournament where I was fighting KJH consistently. So he was beating me almost all the time, and he was a million times more technical than me, and I had no tech skill, and I was like, I just can't do it. I can't do it, and I'm just gonna be the cerebral, neutral game, fucking DJ Nintendo, who's a Cactuar type of Falco, though. It's gonna be great. And then I just practiced, and I was like, wait a minute. I can do this. I was like, I can actually do this, turns out. And then double shining isn't as hard as I thought. And fast falling my aerials at the right time feels really good. And practicing and achieving something feels amazing afterwards. And I was like, this is going to be my thing. And now I'm known as one of the most technical Falcos.
Yeah, I mean, you're super technical. Yeah, there was one match we were playing when I was warming you up at CEO where you just did like 7 fairly technical things in a row perfectly. And I remember just after that song, I was like, nice. Because like, No, so many people don't understand like how many things you did in that stock that were all so hard, right?
Yeah, that was the first time I experienced that about people not noticing tech skill was is when Kalindi started having me do dash JC shine, and he was like, the shine's gonna hit them, but the crowd will not react to.
That was the funniest like Kalindi like. That's actually so good. The crowd will not react. Is
crowd
like,
not react.
the story of my melee career is like
Uh-huh.
the crowd doesn't understand.
Yep, nobody will understand but you, but you'll probably take his stock, so that's good enough. Uh, so yeah, we talked about that, but it feels good knowing that you did something technical too, or at least for me. I don't think everybody's that way, like you said. Not everybody likes practicing tech skill, but for me, it feels great. Should we talk about Falco versus Marth?
Yeah, I was talking about Falco more. Okay, lasers.
Mm-hmm.
I am of the opinion that Marth is one of the not great characters at dealing with lasers, because so much of his game revolves around dashing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Fox is exceptional in this case, even though he's also about dashing, because Fox has better tools for attacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Fox also has better defensive tools with his full hop, so he can like not give up ground as much, essentially.
Right.
And I think Marth's primary way of making it really hard for Falco to deal with him involves running away from Falco.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't necessarily mean dashing back. Sometimes it can be running around on platforms. It can be not interacting. But like Marth doesn't have a lot of great ways to interact with Falco and not get like have pretty bad risk reward, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that?
I definitely agree. And we can get a little specific with it too. It's like Marth, so much of his game plan revolves around dashing. We all know that his dash pack is extremely good. He can whiff punish most characters. Like even Sheik, we see some stupid, even Peach, we see some stupid dash dance grabs that happen. And against Falco, he has laser. So it's like this will put you in hit stun. It hits you from range. You can't just dash back. You can't even dash forward because I can shoot a low laser. And at the same time, too, if you're dashing forward and trying to make something happen to stuff this laser happening, you most likely can't power shield it. So you're losing out on certain mix-ups, even trying to prevent it from happening. And unless the Falco messes up, it can be extremely hard to even just hit him in neutral if the Falco isn't spaced like a dingus, in my opinion. So and then exactly like you said with Fox, the full hop is huge for me, but also take laser options are so much more effective for Fox too. You have turnaround up tilt, you have dash forward aerial, you have dash forward up smash, you have dash forward full hop with a drift back.
Yeah, it's like I said, once he gets hit, he has aggressive options that are like a real threat, right?
Exactly. So for Marth, first of all, he doesn't move as quickly, right? Or at least in the air, especially if he's trying to hit you. So his effective threat range is not nearly as large, especially after taking a laser. I think.
Taking the laser, that's the big thing.
Yes, agreed. So once he gets hit by the laser, it is that much easier to laser again and especially if you're outside of that threat range. And like you said, Marth's response to that a lot of the times is running away from Falco and generally putting himself in spots where the risk is much larger. I think we're on the same page about that, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things with this matchup, though, is, funnily enough, I think this is one of the most execution testy matchups of all the top tier matchups.
Mm-hmm.
And for the chat who probably don't know what I mean that I think for Falco, there are just so many ways to mess up and die in that matchup. Because it's not that you mess up you mess up and get grabbed. It's like sometimes you mess up. Like let's say you accidentally full hop versus Fox.
Mm-hmm.
That probably doesn't matter unless you're on Yoshi's or Fountain, a very small stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm fighting Fox on like FD and I accidentally full hop, it's not great, but I get a mix up on the way down. It might work out. If I accidentally full hop versus Marth, it's like I might as well have like SD'd, right?
Yes, yeah.
It's kind of what Laudandus says. Laudandus always calls missing L cancels versus Ice Climbers just an SD.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that's what it is, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah,
for all the people who are like struggling,
Mm-hmm. I talk about the matchup. People ask me because it's like I don't know why people love talking about this matchup right now, but people ask me, what do you think about the matchup? And my quick synopsis of the matchup is it's a lot of little things. It's a lot of decently precise but easy things.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't mess them up, it is extremely hard for Marth to hit you.
Yep.
And hitting people is very important in winning the game.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
it's just about determining, for me at least, it's about determining how realistic it is to be that consistent with those precise things.
It's tough.
It is tough. I think so too. And being specific with laser timing specifically, I think is pretty tough. Do you feel the same way, or do you think that it's just kind of easy?
I mean, I don't think it's easy, but I think it's practicable, which
Mm-hmm.
is the biggest thing. Something that's 100% under your control, not theirs,
Mm-hmm.
which is like really helpful. Um, a big thing about it, I was going to say, is laser heights.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that?
So yes, I was the way I was gonna segue into that was back when I was a noob, like 4 years ago. And this is why I answer anybody's question. They come into my chat, ask me a question, right? Unless it's like any tips because I can't. Is because I messaged PP 4 or 5 years ago and I asked him the dumbest questions in the world and he gave me a response. So it means a lot to me. But one of the questions I asked him, well, one of them was how do you deal with Fox's full hop because I'm an idiot. And then the second one was uh, Dr. PP, have you heard that if Marth is crouching and you shoot a low laser, he can't power shield it? Do you think that that's something that's practical, or do you even do it? And he's like, yeah, I've known about that for years, and I do it really consistently. And I was like, so all I need to do is practice? If he can do it consistently, then I can. So yes,
Oh yeah.
I think that laser heights are extremely important, and also laser timings mixed in with that. Like we were talking about the non-fast fall and dash forward laser, or anything like that. I think those are all really important.
So what I was going to say for heights
Mm-hmm.
is, I'm sure you remember my tweet I made forever ago that was just an image of me versus PPU.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fairly high laser. So depending on how Falco shoots his laser, he can jump over lasers that get power shielded, because that's one of the most common complaints is Marth's power shields, and then you get tippered or whatever.
Yep.
But another thing I want to say that is less talked about is being aware of how high you shoot your laser is important, because, for example, shooting lower lasers is harder to power shield, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that means they can jump over.
Right.
But the thing is, if I shoot a laser with the knowledge that Marth can jump over it, that means I should account for his jump.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get nared at and he nares me out of a laser and I die, you could be like, yeah, Marth just nares Falco in the corner and he's dead. Or you could be like, yeah, when I lasered low, I specifically turned around and back aired or shielded or, whatever.
Or dash back, you shoot a high laser in place afterwards.
Yeah, that's a good one too, like from a distance or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like that. Another one is if I knew my laser was a bit higher and he might have been able to dash attack under it, I might shield.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ideally, I didn't have that problem in the first place, but it's just being aware and making conscious choices based on your laser heights is a big part of how you make sure you don't get like cheesed or whatever.
Mm-hmm. This is almost exactly the conversation that we had at Super Famicom when we talked about Falco versus Marth.
Yeah, I remember.
And it just made so much sense to me. Because I was like, well, can't he just dash attack if I shoot a high laser? Because you were like, well, if you shoot a low laser, he can jump over it and hit you with an aerial potentially if you're at the wrong spacing or something. And I was like, well, then shouldn't I be shooting a high laser right away? But if I'm shooting a high laser, he could just dash attack me. And then we talked about threat ranges. We were like, well, the threat range of that dash attack happening is a lot larger. So if he has the opportunity to dash attack me, then I'll shoot a low laser, right?
Yeah.
And he can't actually. And then if you're standing outside of the threat range of a drift forward short hop aerial, then how are you going to get hit?
Yeah, you can't be hit in that spot, right?
Can't be hit in that spot. So I thought I'm going to set up that spot as much as I can, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is, there are also heights that I think hit Marth for jumping and for running.
Mm-hmm.
I think the middle height that hits his foot when he jumps barely clips his head also.
Right.
That sounds right?
Well, you actually you described this in a lesson in Michigan that I watched the video for with one of my Falco friends. And yeah, I tested it, and you're completely correct.
Okay, I'm making sure because I figured you would test it. I actually haven't tested it, but I was just like, pretty darn sure.
Mm-hmm. And
And there's a
also,
lot of things like that.
yeah, I think that you can. I think if you time your second laser correctly, I think you can jump over that laser height if
Yeah,
it's
that's
power
the
shielded.
best part. There's a height that hits Marth for dashing and jumping, and you can jump over it if it gets power shielded.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's the easiest height for Marth to power shield, but it is a height that he can't do anything about.
Mm-hmm. You can actually. After I tested that, I started using it a lot, and then I lived with a Marth player, and he was very upset that I was doing it a lot, and
Nice.
and he was like, "Dude, I can't jump, and every time I power shield it, you just jump over it. But how? It's so high." And I was like, "Well, I'm doing a really specific height of the laser, so you can't,
Yeah.
stand there, and you can't jump, and you also can't just power shield it." So, yeah, GG's.
GG's, right?
Not really, but so I'm curious what you think, because jumping over a power shielded laser doesn't just solve the matchup or something, right? You
No.
can't just always account for that happening. So, what are some potential threats that you see coming from Marth after he power shields a laser? Because the mix-up game, I think, is pretty complex, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
No, I agree it's pretty complex, because I think it definitely relates largely to the fact that, man, it's so hard to talk about. Let's see.
I know.
The biggest thing is, at the end of the day, if you're not getting hit by I think it's unrealistic to never get hit by any power shielded lasers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is his way in, where if one laser hits you, he doesn't YOLO in off of it, but he can like kind of play neutral after that.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing I think is that it's kind of like Fox, where you can kind of hedge your bets, except while Fox is really good at the aggressive stuff, I think Marth's pretty good at the defensive stuff out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, let's say he dashes forward and takes a laser, and then he dashes forward and takes another laser. Since he has gained some space, he can now use his defensive option,
Mm-hmm.
right? And eventually he is at a range where you can't just laser,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think it's like Fox is better at the offensive side of that, and Marth's kind of better at the defensive side of that.
Right. I think within the meta right now, though, like you just described a situation I have never had to deal with, which is a Marth takes my laser and dashes forward, and after I shoot another laser, they don't just like do an aerial in place or try to power shield or dash back. They dash forward again and now try to play me in the center of the stage, and then incorporate their defensive mix-up.
But that's where the game starts.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
But no one plays like that.
It's so weird.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just because you don't need to play like that to beat almost everyone.
Yeah. I mean, we saw Zane versus Mango, right?
That was a joke of a set.
That was a joke of a set. I'm glad you agree.
Yeah, playing like, I mean, I don't know. I don't really blame him though, because like, as someone who has played since I was 12, it's very hard to have the same fire all the time with all the stress. Like, I don't blame any of the gods for like. I think I might have told you this, but I almost feel like they're not even trying as hard anymore.
Yeah.
And who can blame them? Like.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can. But goodness gracious, where was I going? That we were talking about Mango Zane, the way that Marths are playing the matchup currently. Yeah, so what blows my mind is that Marths are willing to take laser dash back so many times that they'll put themselves in the worst spot ever, and then they're forced to make a panic defensive option instead of being able to make a defensive option and still have room to do something afterwards, right?
Because you're too scared to get hit by an aerial.
Right.
That's something Thad said that was really funny, because he was playing me and Wembo back to back, and I think he was also playing Ryan, who's in the chat. And something he said was like, he hit me with like laser approaching aerial from pretty far away, and he was like, "Yeah, that aerial will never hit Ryan or Wembo." But he was saying that as a compliment to me, and that's something people don't understand, because it's like, because I was willing to take the risk to get hit by that, I could do so many other things.
Yeah.
But when he was playing the other Foxes, and not just them, he says almost every Fox he plays, and Marth too, he's like, yeah, they just never get hit by my approaching aerials, so I don't have to do anything.
I
it's
think,
like, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's a product of the meta, right? It's like enough Falcos just do single laser into dash approach aerial that it's so valuable in terms of risk reward for Marth to just do dash back pivot grab, right?
Over and over
but
and over.
We can just hope that the Falcos start doing lasers in place in center stage and actually standing at a distance where they can threaten Marth for dashing back, and hopefully we'll see more dynamic play. At least that's what I hope for.
I mean, I still think back to the first thing is not failing execution test is still like where most people are at right now. Funnily enough, a lot of my Falco students, one of the most common things was, how do I fight Marth? He just dashes back.
Mm-hmm.
And my first response is I never tell them how to beat dash back. I say, show me a set of you fighting Marth. And I watch the whole game. And then afterwards I say, how many times did he hit you by dashing back after a laser not playing you? And they say, and then I count it for them, and it's usually 0 or 1.
Yeah.
So still, almost never is that actually the reason at a like mid-level where people are losing. It's still almost always that you messed up somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like you said, not spacing like a dingus, to quote you. That's actually it. Like one of my first tips is when Marth is in the air, be aware of how far forward he can drift. It's so easy to, like when I haven't fought a Marth in a while, one of the first things that'll happen is I get barely to prepare, thinking I'm out of range, lose my stock, and I'm like, darn.
Yep, most definitely. And it's execution too. When we talked about accidentally full hop, it's like if you miss your wave dash, it's like, God, so go practice your wave dashes. I totally know what you mean, and people don't really have that problem. I guess through my lens, it's different because I actually deal with the dashbacky Marths.
Yeah, you actually deal with it.
I know.
But like usually, it's not the problem.
Right. No, I would agree. And even for me, like if I'm playing patiently and using my brain, usually I will shoot lasers in place. I'll account for power shield timing so that I can jump over the laser. I'll be standing at the correct distance, and then eventually, once I have them off balance, maybe they miss the power shield, and then I shoot a second laser, and then that one hits their shield. I'll move in with an aggressive mix-up or a dash dance mix-up timing, and they're all the way in the corner, so it's not as if they can move back any farther. It's like, wow, I'm at such a giant mix-up advantage. How do people think that Falco loses this matchup?
I've always thought, the way I used to think about matchups, and I still kind of do, is I kind of give two scenarios. I'll say it's either even or this person or this character wins.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll say this character wins slightly or by a lot or something, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that was always a matchup where I was like, I can't see Falco losing the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it being even for sure, but I've never in my mind thought Marth beats Falco.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's me.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Someone said something interesting in the chat about short hopping or wave dashing with a short hop input.
Mm-hmm.
And something funny. So when you mess up wave dashing, you full hop, right?
Yes.
Me too. And a lot of new school players don't.
I know about the short hop wave dash. I can't force myself to do it.
Did we just learn differently? Because I remember when K-Pan was learning melee, I would see him short hop randomly, and I was always confused at what he tried to do. And when I short hop without doing something, it always means I did my aerial too early, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I assumed that's what was happening. He's like, no, I'm trying to wave dash, and it blew my mind. And actually, a lot of new players somehow learned the short hop wave dash, which is way better, and I wish I learned that.
It's so much better. It actually blows my mind. But I've been wave dashing. This is something I wonder if you think, or if you have any thoughts on it. I've been wave dashing since I was 8 years old. Literally 8, and I am 23. I've been playing the game, and I knew how to wave dash when I was 8. Do you think, how easy or hard do you think that this...
my internet's going out.
Oh no, I can still barely hear you, but your thing is frozen. Feel free to... Oh, you're moving again. Yes, you're slightly lower quality, but I think you're good.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I can see you moving.
Okay, so what did you say about wave dashing?
So wave dashing, I was talking about, I've been wave dashing since I was 8 years old. And so I'm wondering how easy or hard you think it would be to fix that habit of full hopping when I wave dash when I've literally been doing it for 15 years of my life.
I think you could fix it in a month.
Ah, God, you're probably right.
That's exactly like what we were telling everyone else, right? It's like, you can do it. Do you want to? That's how I felt about the smash turn up smash. I was like, do I want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
But eventually I was like, yes, I want to.
Mm-hmm. I had the same thing. I couldn't wave dash out a shield with one trigger. I sucked at the motion. I just like, I probably could have done it, but I was like, I think that the best way to do it is with 2 triggers. So I spent a full month or 2 months teaching myself to shield with the other trigger. And it's like, you'd be surprised. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but people in chat would be surprised how your hand just wants to press that button when you need to shield an attack.
I understand.
And you have to make the other hand do it. It's so hard.
It's like, that one's tough for sure.
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially because it comes out in a lot of panic, unreactable situations where it's like, I got a shield right now. Yeah, but No, the short hopping, missing execution. I'm just trying to figure out how we bring this back to Falco versus Marth.
Falco Marth. I don't know. There's just so many things to say about that matchup. I mean,
know.
I see someone in the chat who keeps saying stuff like, well, how come the Falcos keep losing to Marth then? And it's kind of what I said about, like, I mean, if we want to talk about it, why are all the Foxes losing to Hungry Box? You know, like, the results don't tell you anything. It just tells you, like, it tells you how difficult the matchup is to play well. I think Falco Marth is hard to execute from the Falco side. I actually think every Marth I've ever seen is not that good at the matchup.
Yeah. I agree.
Some of them are decent, but no one's like very good at it in my opinion.
I would say the exact same thing. So my experiences have been not even when I think I'm playing exceptionally, but when I'm using my brain, like the situation I talked about before, where I'm really making a conscious effort to play the correct mix-ups, be patient, and dedicated to the game plan, all of that. When I'm just doing those simple things and also hitting my execution, I don't necessarily think that Falco just smacks Marth, but I'm playing against these Marths, and I'm like, I do not think that they're good against Falco. I don't think that Zane is good against Falco.
No, I don't think so either.
But when's the last time Zane lost to one?
Yep.
I don't know. But the thing is, I literally, and I know that you know it too, Sammy, because we can look at the game and we can come to conclusions and think critically. I don't think that he is that good at the matchup.
I do think Zane, and people always ask me about Zane, why is he so good? Why is he doing so well? One of my answers is he has immaculate execution. I have watched, one of my favorite examples is watching him fight Laud, actually. And I watched him on Dreamland go about 2 minutes without getting hit once.
That's insane.
And the reason that's so insane is mess up spacing or timing or tech skill or something, right? And he didn't. And how many players can even say that they can do that, right?
Not many. When I do VOD analysis for newer players, like I talk about you went about 4 moves without messing up or something.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, it's like people mess up so often, and it's hard not to just be like, well, don't mess up next time, and like you can actually play the situation out. But against players like Zane, where the execution is so good, probably even more consistent than Mango's. Well, Mango has incredible consistency. I don't know if I could say that.
I mean, it's probably lacking nowadays, though. Right?
Yeah, I agree. Especially like in the moment. But it's just like you really got to be on your shit in order to beat somebody like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think being on your shit is huge. And this guy said Falco wins in a perfect world. It's not that. It's that Falco wins in a world where, like, I mean, it just changes. So, like, let's say 10 years ago, people might say the same thing. Oh, you know, Marth can only beat Sheik in a perfect world. No Marth is ever going to be good enough to be a top Sheik. Like, come on. Right. And then nowadays, which much to my dismay, lots of people are like, oh, yeah, see? Marth just beat Sheik. And I'm like people are getting so caught up in the moment. And, like, the standards for execution change so much. Like, people will talk about ice climbers and be like, oh, they're not actually bad because we're human beings. And it's like, do you know when the last time I lost to an ice climbers was? You know when the last time, like, you know, it's like, we can achieve that. It just, the standard just changes over time, you know?
This is something that Bones talked about, and I loved what he brought up, is he talked about typing speeds and how most people settle into a typing speed. And if you don't push yourself out of that boundary and you actually put effort in to change that typing speed, that's what it's going to be. But people see that you can type faster, and if it's worth it to them to do this, then you'll actually push yourself and actually achieve a faster typing speed than your hands and you thought possible.
Yep,
and it's the same thing with execution in Melee. And I just love that connection.
Up to you. Yeah, it's up to you to push it. And also, speaking of that, like, your execution can deteriorate similarly, right? If you don't push it correctly. And I think we've seen that with, like, Mango or Armada, where they haven't pushed themselves executionally like they used to. And it's, like, pretty obvious, I think, right? I thought of that because when you mentioned typing speed, my typing speed used to be way higher than it is now. I forget what I used to do, but like middle of college, I probably was like, it was at least 150 words per minute, probably more. and it was like one mistake for every minute or something.
Yeah.
And now I could struggle to like hit even remotely.
You were the Zane of typing.
Yeah, I was. But now look at me. Look at me now. But yeah, it's like, it's huge. Execution, I mean, a lot of players try to make it seem like execution's not that important, but like, I think it's like, how do you even judge your decisions if you're messing them up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I most definitely agree. It's so funny. We were just talking about typing speeds on my stream yesterday. It's just funny that all came around.
Yeah, that's a good comparison, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Something that I'm wondering about, and this is me legitimately wondering, is about Falco's throws against Marth. Yeah, sure. Not even just in general, but against Marth specifically, because I feel like we'll be able to hammer that out a little bit more quickly.
I still like up throw versus Marth.
Okay.
I played, so I can show you VODs actually if you're curious. Articanus has very consistent SDI to the top of the screen. I never catch him. And I still feel like he's usually not in a great situation. I will say though, I'm always down to forward throw or back throw people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty down for those throws. I like them. I think, okay, I guess I'll put it this way. Up throw feels better versus Marth to me than it does versus a lot of other characters.
So, just to break this down, because it's legitimately my question, and I'm just trying to process it all. So you up throw them, they SDI the lasers up to the top, and then what I feel like happens to me is they either fast fall or non-fast fall, aerial, or they side B either once or twice, or, and now what's happening is Marths are starting to do down airs even, but then now they're starting to edge cancel them on the top platform and change what they're doing. And they can also counter randomly, or they can do the down air early, expecting me to come up with anything because down air will actually out prioritize me, except for probably a perfectly spaced up air. So it's like, to me, they have these mix-ups, and it seems like it's a good chunk of mix-ups that account for a lot of different things that Falco could do. I don't know about the potential reward, but how do you feel about how that kind of plays into the scenario?
This reminds me a lot of when we tested, do you remember CEO 2 years ago where we tested you up through my Puff-a-Punch?
Yes, I remember, in the hotel room.
It reminds me of that because it's like the SDI matters, but like in terms of Marth hitting you out of it, I think if you're as fast as possible and you space and time everything well, he should not be able to counter attack you very often. Okay. That's my impression, at least.
So, I was just going to ask, so when you up throw Marth, and again, just because I'm trying to picture it, do you jump up immediately and like try to hit him, or do you up throw and then wait and kind of like shark him?
Okay, so versus 99% of Marths, I do dash full hop up air as fast as I can.
Dash full hop up air? Yeah.
Almost every time. Versus people who've shown me, if they SDI, I'll still go for similar things. But if I see that like someone's really good at SDI, I'm down to do what you just said, which is kind of wait. Because I think a lot of the times Marth has to immediately do something like you said. And if he immediately does something, like, I actually think Marth's in a pretty bad spot in general in Melee. Like, Marth's one of the characters that I would consider not great in the air. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of agree. Like, if Marth is kind of falling, and it's FD, and he's fighting with Falco, and you can get a laser out or kind of get under him, it's not a bad spot for you.
Right. This is something that I talked about on my... it wasn't in the podcast, but I was talking to Bones about a matchup, and he said, well, wait. When we're talking about these throws, let's just use FD as our example. And I thought, that's the only stage in the game that doesn't have platforms.
Yeah, no, I actually think that's huge, because I think the platforms make it better for you versus Marth, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I actually think they make it... Well, they make it better for you in terms of your safety, at least. I don't think they make it better for you in terms of your likelihood of hitting him.
Okay, gotcha.
Does that kind of make sense?
It does. And then something that I thought about was up throwing, and if they've proven to you they can SDI, and this is just, it might be stupid, but I'm just wondering your thoughts, is you full hop, but you wave land on on the side platform, and then you'll give them a visual cue to want to throw something out.
Yeah, I can see that working. I think that's a big thing, that like the amount of things like that they can react to there is like, they can't react at all. They just gotta like, they see anything and they have to do it, right? And I think that's the good thing. Like Funnily enough, you mentioned the FD thing. Like, when I up threw Kalindi once when I was playing him, I just sat there and he just double jumped and then he lost his stock, and I was like, "Yep."
Right.
Like,
What did
that's
you
a
do in response? Did you like laser his landing and then?
no. I just like literally walked under him. I think he just like got a bear up tilt or something.
Yeah.
Versus Marth though, like I said, on platform stages, I think it's harder to hit him, but the platforms keep you very safe. Because like you can always when he has to land, it's so easy to poke with like a bear or something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I was talking to. Okay, here's something interesting too. Maybe I'll find something to talk about in here. So I played against Mutaking's Marth for a lot of hours when I was at Summit. And I would say I won a very slight majority of the time, which
Okay.
I think would surprise a lot of people to hear.
I'm not surprised, but keep going.
Yeah, I said most people. But what happened was he said, and I'm just curious what you think about this phrase. He said, because he was on the side platform, I had the lead, and then I was below the other side platform shooting high short hop lasers. And he said, that's all this matchup is. It's just who's willing to camp more. Which is, I think, a very Mutaking thing to say, but I'm curious what you think about that exact scenario that I kind of set up.
Oh, that's such a good one. I think it's really actually so. Man, there's so many things to say. Okay, so first of all, having a flowchart with Falco for a lot of positions is extremely important. That's a situation where if you excel at that situation, you'll be very, very good at the Marth matchup. And if you're bad at the situation, you can lose to any Marth that just goes to the platform and then does different mix-ups on the way down.
I agree, yeah.
The second thing is, I don't think Falco should ever lose that situation if he plays properly. But I think it's still necessary for Marth to use it because platforms let you come down in between the laser.
Right.
So it's like, oh, as the laser whips, I come down, I dashboard further than I would have been able to if I'd gotten hit by the laser. And then when I power shield or something, I'm at least closer to you.
Interesting. So you kind of see Marth coming to the ground and then doing something instead of trying to reach at Falco with an aerial or something from the platform?
You can short hop forward, drift back, and then just take. It's essentially about taking space safely. If Marth is actually trying to hit you from there, it's like, and I'm pretty sure it's just an error from Falco's side. I don't think Falco should ever get hit.
I agree. Yeah, that's interesting. But that's what most Marths try to do.
Yeah, which is why most Marths are pretty easy to beat with Falco, I think.
I agree.
You space and,
And so when you said Falcos who excel at that situation, could we just talk about what it means to excel right there? Do you think that just kind of shamelessly shooting high or like fast short hop lasers is kind of the way to go?
I think you can move forward and it's fine. It's just you have to make sure to never get hit when he jumps off. I think you can actually do whatever you want there, but do not get hit when he jumps off the platform.
Right. I feel like runoff, like fast fall fair, isn't something that you can react to necessarily. I'm not sure, but
I don't really think so.
At least what I see is I see Falcos doing approaching laser into that zone. And that's just and then they get fared for free and then they die and then they're like, Falco's a glass cannon. I'm like, well, don't do that, you idiot. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm just
Sometimes it is tricky because I mean you're trying to get close to him and then you misjudge slightly, but that's what I was saying earlier. Like so much of the matchup is not misjudging any spacing or timing. So much of Melee is not misjudging spacings and timing.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's so apparent in Falco versus Marth because Marth gets one hit and it's like, oh god, well this could be bad.
Yeah, I mean it also depends how you get hit, right?
That's true.
I've fought Marth before where I died in 4 hits, and I fought Marths where I've lived for 30 hits. It really depends. Are you getting grabbed below a Dreamland platform at 10%, where if he down throws you, you grab the edge and ledge dash? Or are you getting grabbed in the middle of Dreamland at 10%, where you take a guaranteed 70 damage, It's like, maybe not 70, but you know what I mean.
Well, this is something I try to talk about too when people say, or like I'll die on my stream to a Marth down throw, down tilting me or something, Be like, Falco's just so fragile, man. And it's just like, no, Falco, I actually don't think Falco's that fragile. I think that the way most players position themselves makes Falco fragile, but I don't think he has to be ever. And I actually think it's better to position yourself in ways where you can't get hit with something meaningful. Like, isn't that just a given almost?
Yeah, I mean, you have the power to pick how you get hit, right?
Right. And a lot of characters don't have that luxury, I don't think. Right? Or at least Falco is better at avoiding a lot of spots like that, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty much your fault if it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that doesn't mean it's not really difficult though, because I do think being proactive is better than not being proactive. So you have to figure out how to be proactive properly, and then when you mess it up, it sucks. And
Yeah.
we've all.
Yes, I most definitely agree. I think that's pretty good for the Falco versus Marth matchup. We talked about a lot about it. Um, so I just wanted to ask some questions in closing, and then maybe we could also take some questions from the chat. But this is again a question that I don't know the answer to, and I don't know how I don't know it. But could you explain the "Who is Druggedfox" meme? Or
Oh, hell
who
yeah.
the fuck is Druggedfox? I think is what it is.
I could be here. I have to get a picture for this. This
Oh,
is
please
relevant.
do.
This is actually very relevant to the story. So give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta go to Facebook. So essentially, what happens is, I'm pretty sure it's because of Wes, GA Wes.
GA Wes. Okay. I feel like a lot of people don't know who GA Wes is.
He is pretty much the father of Georgia Melee.
Mm-hmm.
He plays Falcon. To give you an idea, the only thing you need to know about him is that none reportedly said this guy is too YOLO. So if none is saying the guy is too YOLO, I feel like that kind of, tells the story, right?
That's crazy. Yep.
Man, I actually don't know where to find this picture.
If you don't have it, it's fine.
Well, essentially, the picture is of a bait, Toph, Laudandus, and I think Wes, but maybe someone else, all wearing a shirt of me holding a Duna with some money on it that says "Who the fuck is Druggedfox" on it. So what happened is Wes made these shirts and, without telling me, brought them to the tournament.
No way.
And sold them to people, or and people saw it and they were like, "What?" And then
was Wes also the one selling the sunglasses?
Glasses, yeah. I think Jess, his wife, might have made them.
That's funny.
So, yeah, I think that's probably where it started, CEO 2015. But then it also caught on when Damien Algebra, when he interviewed me for Team Liquid, he used "Who the fuck is Druggedfox" as the title.
Oh,
and
that's funny.
100 people started spamming it in chats and stuff. So that's kind of where it started. Oh, Sleepy might have the picture.
Gotcha.
Oh, Sleepy found it. Thanks, Sleepy. Yeah, look at the.
Oh, that's funny. You were right about all the people.
Without me knowing. I was just there, and I walked up, and I was like, "Why is everyone wearing a shirt of me?" You guys should definitely open that. It's very relevant to the meme.
I'm gonna try to display it on my.
Oh yeah, it would be good to display. This is a good picture.
It is. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get it, but I hope so. Oh God, maybe I'm not going to be able to.
That's okay. While you work on it though, so I think there's also the whole thing where, it was pretty. I came kind of out of nowhere or whatever, where no one really knew me, and then EVO 2015 happened, and then people knew me.
Right. That's that was definitely not the first time I heard of you. I followed your Smashboards post for years. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the impact that Smashboards had on your career.
Smashboards is huge. I mean, that's all I had, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's I mean, back in the day, it was you got AIM, you got MSN, you got Smashboards, and yeah, you talk to people about the game, right? And that was huge. I definitely posted on Smashboards a ton. That was back when nerd culture got made fun of a bunch in the Smash community, which I'm always upset about because I think that stopped people from being good at Melee, right?
I agree.
And I would say something like, a lot of Mango's pressure is shield grabbable, and then a bunch of people would shit on me and be like, "Who are you? If you played Mango, you'd understand. Get your frame data out of here." And I was like, "Come on, guys! Yeah, I got shit on for it." And those same people now obviously learn that we should learn how to be good at Melee, and that's happening. Yeah, there was a lot of that on Smashboards, but it was a great place to talk.
I'm curious if you remember a thread, and I'm pretty sure that you chimed in. There was a talk in God, it was old school Melee, but it was how to play Fox optimally.
Oh, interesting.
And I remember who is it, Cunning Kitsune?
Yeah.
He posted, he was like, in an optimal world, Fox only uses dash attack, up smash, and grab. He's like, those are the only mix-ups that Fox needs.
That's so funny.
And I just remember, I think that you came in and said some stuff about it. It was a long time ago though,
That's
but
really funny.
I'm pretty sure that's the thread that I had first heard of you. It
That's
was an
cool.
interesting thread. A lot of people were theory crafting, and I was like, dang, people like can really think about this game.
Yeah, people thought a lot about all this stuff. I remember that thread. I don't remember what I said, obviously.
Mhm.
I'm sure, dude. I wish we could have a collection of everyone's dumb posts from like 10 years ago.
God, oh no. My Smashboards account still to this day actually is called Ultra Satanicus, which is my first tag. The dumbest thing ever. But I had some dumb posts, man, I tell you what.
Everyone did. I mean, it's kind of like the politician thing where, like people dig up things from politicians from like 30 years ago.
Oh my god.
It's like, do you remember when like Westfall said this one thing? And it's like no one remembers, of course, and it doesn't matter now.
One of my favorite Westball's Smashboards things is that thread about Westball's pressure where everyone's shitting on it and he's like the only person defending it, and they're like, why don't you just double shine? And he's like, no, you don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
Wes, I don't think that you understand.
Really funny. Yeah, that's a big debate. I talked to you about like Westfall shining by double jumping out of this grounded shine or whatever.
Yeah, I actually, yeah. And someone told me a method to make it pretty legitimately consistent, which is to use tap jump.
Tap jump, yeah. Funnily enough, I actually don't use tap jump for the second shine.
Really? Can you get it consistently?
Yeah, I can do it every time. It's a 2-frame window.
I know, but it's hard. I use X to jump.
Me too.
Wow. Okay. I just need to practice more.
I think it's just deceptive because you're so used to waiting to land.
Yeah.
It's not actually that fast or whatever. Incidentally, Plop said something funny once about aerial interrupt, where he was like, it's a 2-frame window. 2 frames is easy. And it's so funny to think, if you said to anyone that getting something within 1/30th of a second window is easy, it'd be preposterous. Getting something within 1/10 of a second is hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think the melee rule is 2 frames is easy.
I agree. Yeah.
1 frame is hard, 2 frames is easy.
Imagine if you could pivot and it was a 2-frame window. Oh,
I mean, it'd be a joke, right?
It'd be a joke. Yeah.
We already pivot consistently with 1 frame for the most part, so it's like.
That's really funny.
But yeah, I think I do. Oh, what's up? Go ahead.
Was he talking, just Plup, just really quick because I'm thinking about it. Was Plup talking about the chic up air aerial interrupt on platforms?
He's talking about Samus.
Okay. Because I was going to say the chic up air aerial interrupt. Do you know about that one?
It's 2 frames.
On Dreamland, it's 2 frames. On Battlefield, it's 1 frame. Not everybody knows that.
And in Dreamland, I can do it every time. And I've never practiced on Battlefield, but sometimes on Respawn, I try it. One time in teams, I was teaming with Plup, and on their respawn, I up-aired him when he was running around platforms. He's like, why'd you do that? And I was like, I was trying to aerial.
That's really funny. Of course you would know that. Jeez. But
I think it's because you and Kalindi talked about it, though.
Kalindi was the one to start talking about it, and then I did the testing, really.
Yeah, I didn't ever test it, and I just remember hearing one of you talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think for the double shine thing, I was going to say, I tap jump for all double shines, but I move out of the second shine with X.
That's interesting. I remember, this is a quick throwaway thing, is that you were at Beach's house, and this is, what was it, 2015, late 2015, early 2016?
Yeah.
And we played a bunch, and then I was in this phase where I was doing triple shine a lot. And so you were like, yeah, I think that triple shine's a joke. I do it, but I use a different button to jump.
So this is actually a story. So you know this, but well, I don't know if you know this part. I got inspired by Westfalls at Sandstorm. Do you remember that tournament?
I remember the tournament.
Wes was just spamming tech skill. Like he was just spamming it, and I was like, "This is great." But I just learned how to do triple shine with the third shine with X, and then the fourth shine with Y. Crazy. So I would do tap jump X Y just for fun. And now, if I were to triple shine, I would do all of them with tap jump though.
Really? Is there a reason why you use tap jump, or is it just more consistent for you?
That's what I learned in 2004.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Were you double shining since 2004?
Say what?
Were you multi-shining since 2004?
I think I learned how to double shine in 2005.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ahead of your time.
I think a lot of people learned tech skill back then. We just didn't use it all.
Okay.
Like I think if you watch like one of Shiz's videos or something, there's a video of him like triple shining in his combo video in like 2005. It's like we knew how to do it, but it's like we had to learn how to play the game first, right? Because we weren't even good at melee yet, much less.
Of course. You want to transition to the chat? Does chat have any questions? Probably just a couple, I guess, if anyone has any good ones. And you have the chat open too, right?
Yep, I do. Been reading.
Feel free to just pull out any of those that you really find interesting. This is your time, chat.
Yeah, this is your chance. Someone said, I'm not surprised anymore when Sami says I can do X. Yeah, I practiced way too much. I practiced so much.
Is that Eames chair legit or a knockoff? That is a legit Eames chair. Been in my family since I was like 7 years old or something.
That's great. I love Druggedfox. What do you? Someone said, "Give us tips." That's a good one.
Oh my god!
Big trolling.
Yeah, hit your tech skill and beat your opponent. I always say that broad questions breed broad answers.
Okay, I can. Oh man, I can probably run through a bunch of these really fast.
Sure, I'd love for you to, if you'd like.
Okay. So what do I feel about Sheik in terms of top-level play and what should they be doing more? I'm very disappointed by current top-level play because I felt like after I quit, everyone got really lazy. What should they be doing more? The top Sheiks are just not really trying to optimize. People like Spark and Face Roll are the up-and-comers try to optimize more. So it's the classic thing where I wish the top Sheiks did better punishes, right?
Like Meiji King Sheik. Oh, God.
Yeah, right? Meiji King Sheik is a relic of the past. Oh my god, I have the funniest. I'll just talk to you about this later, but I have the funniest description of Meiji King Sheik that I don't have time for right now.
Excellent.
But pros and cons of ledge dashing with back instead of down. I think it's the same as long as you're frame perfect on the jump afterwards. If you press down for too long, you'll fast fall, right? Can you talk about Falcos versus Shield? How important? I want to talk to you about this, Avery. Do you talk about spacing a lot when you talk about hitting people's shield with Falco?
No, but I think about it a lot.
You think about it a lot.
I don't describe it because most people I'm describing baseline shield pressure mix-ups. But no, I think about spacing a lot. Why?
Just because I actually think it's like equally important to like the tech skill or frame data, and I feel like that's the biggest reason Falco players struggle with pressure. They learn that you can do all these things, and then they don't understand that things are different amounts of good at different spacings, right? And they don't understand things like, Falco's short hop goes over Fox's shield grab. Backwards short hop goes over Marth's shield grab. All these things that are all spacing dependent. So it's like, I think that's because someone was like, is shine grab the answer? And I'm like, funnily enough, I think spacing and understanding how good your options are at each spacing is the answer.
I think so too. I've been thinking a lot about shield pressure and also the spacing that goes into shield pressure, specifically because Kalindi started doing shield SDI away. And so
I do like shield SDI into grab or up smash, right?
Grab or up smash, exactly. So I really have to consider, well, what is my spacing? I think I can double shine his shield as long as I'm all the way in it. And then if I'm not, maybe I should really consider doing shine wave dash back instead.
Yeah, exactly. Which is safer at different ranges versus different characters. Shine wave dash back is pretty bad versus Marth because he has a big shield grab.
Did you know, this is something that I learned, it was probably from like the Falco Discord or something. I'm not going to take credit for it. It was maybe even Doc who's in the chat, but if you shine wave dash forward away from Marth as opposed to wave dash back, you won't get shield grabbed because
if you're facing the other way.
Exactly, because your face isn't just down in right as his grab range or whatever.
Yeah, I know about that, and there's so many things like that, right? Also, one of the things with the my version of the West Falls pressure, you can actually normally not shine wave dash forward to not get shield grab through people's shields. But if you do the waveland out of the grounded second shine, you're actually fast enough to get through a Marth shield grab.
Really? Wow.
But of course, that only works point blank because the shines are going to push him back.
Exactly.
But it does actually work, which is interesting. And, there's all these things to talk about.
That is interesting. Something, too, that people, it's a good example of spacing with shield pressure, too, is if I hit the tip of a shield with a sort of fade back late aerial, like a short hop laser within my pressure becomes a lot better, especially on
Oh,
characters that
that's
don't
so
have long
good.
reach.
Yeah. I've actually thought about doing, and I don't think people really do this, but you can do shine at the edge of people's shield, short hop backwards, and then press forward in laser, right?
Yeah.
Which is
So-
very technical.
so
Very technical.
It is technical, and the cool thing about that too, Sammy, was something that I was testing on my stream, is that if you just drift back and then like flick forward, press B, like if you do a neutral jump, drift back, press forward, press B, which is really, it's actually hard. You actually don't move as far back as if you did a backwards short hop. So not only does it alter your hurt box farther away, but you are actually like farther away from them at the end of it once you've landed from your laser.
Actually, short hopping backwards is very relevant, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people don't really, do all these things.
So trust me, I think about it.
Yeah, I know you do, but I want chat to think about it.
I know, they definitely should.
Let's find one more
question to end it on.
Yeah, one really good one.
Yeah, you pick it.
Let's see. Man, this is tough. There's so many questions. Do you see anything you like here?
God, I like a bunch of these questions. Lasers versus shield is really interesting, but that's a rabbit hole kind of. We already kind of talked about the Marth on side platform thing.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about that a good bit. Did you see my thing? Well, that's not a question, Dr. FS.
Dr. FS he asks very good questions, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't see your question if you asked it.
He talked about, do you guys know about shine backwards short hop pressure versus Marth? We were kind of talking about that, I'm pretty sure. Like if you're facing away from Marth and shine, then short hop backwards into him. Oh, okay. As soon as possible, grab a whiff. Yeah. I actually learned about that. Does it go over Sheiks too?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I actually learned about that like 3 years ago.
It's definitely spacing dependent versus Marth. I think there's a spacing where he has one frame to shield grab you.
Interesting. I abuse the jump over grab thing mostly against ice climbers. People don't realize that you can shield pressure ice climbers with Falco because your short hop very easily goes over their grab. No, they can't. So people just. But
okay. So I think there's like two things I'll talk about real quick.
Do it up.
One thing is I'll give people. I like to give the mid-level player base one general tip to get better at thinking about the game. I can do that. I think that people make a lot of assumptions when they think about Melee. And one thing I will say is one of my favorite tips nowadays is the step-by-step process to getting better is step 1 is identify your issues and step 2 is fix them. And I find that mid-level players are the most likely to identify an issue and not fix it because they hit the point where all the fun part of improving was really easy and fast. And now it's really hard to improve, and you start seeing these things, and you know they're not going to yield much gain. You have to work on them. And I think mid-level players plateau at the part where improving becomes less easy and fun. Do you have any thoughts on that, Avery? Or does that kind of... Because you were actually in a spot for a long time where you weren't that good, and then you ascended to being, like, super good.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. It's like... what happened for me is that there were a lot of important things. I was willing to work on certain things, but only things that I deemed to be fun, which is kind of what you were describing.
Yes.
And then I thought, you know what's more fun than only working on the things that I think are fun? Winning. I was like, winning is really fun. So I'm going to work on the stuff that really sucks. Like my double lasers from the ledge suck. So time to learn how to claw. I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to address this problem. And then you have to be really honest with yourself, which I feel like is a problem that a lot of mid-level players have. There's a problem going on, and you might even address that problem, but certain people aren't honest with how badly that affects their game. And so they might work on it, maybe not. And that's how I was for a long time. Certain things that actually mattered a lot within Melee were things that I just didn't want to work on. So, yeah, that's my perspective.
I think that was exactly a great thing to add. And between the two things we said, I think that really summarizes something that people need to think a lot about. And then the last thing is I keep seeing people talk about like my current situation and stuff, and I just want to tell everyone like the only thing stopping me from competing is that I don't really want to right now. I don't have like an explanation. It's just like I mean I could tell you my life story and explain why I don't want to. Like the TLDR is I don't really want to. I will be a part of the scene. I mean I still play Melee once in a while. I'll be at SmashCon and Shine, guys, which is cool. So if you're there, come say hi. Watch me play doubles. I'm playing Falco at SmashCon, like I told you, Avery.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, gonna get Jared to go to Shine, team with him.
Oh, that'd be sick.
I don't know if that's realistic or not.
You said that you're teaming with Swedish for SmashCon, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a teammate yet. Dang it.
I figured you would. I had Swedish first because it was literally like I was thinking who wouldn't have a teammate for SmashCon, and I just looked at my Facebook tab and I saw James Liu, and I just
goodness. Why wasn't the A above the J? I'm just kidding.
It wasn't. I would have been super down a team. We played so much teams at CEO.
It was so fun. I
yeah,
love teams.
So fun. That was so fun.
But
okay.
Where can people follow you? Where can they support you?
Thanks, Avery. If people want to follow, support me, I mean, you have my Twitter, which is @Druggedfox. The biggest way to support me right now is my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Druggedfox, and I can put the link in the stream. It's what I'm doing with my life right now. I'm trying to teach, make videos. I mean, help the scene get better in my own way. That's not through playing, essentially. And any support is always welcome. I think one of the coolest benefits that people don't know about my Patreon is that if you're a $5 a month tier, you get to listen to every lesson I give live, which I've talked to you about, right?
Yeah, it's huge, yeah.
Yeah, so that means on the months where I'm working hard, I'm teaching 30 to 40 lessons a week. They're an hour long each. I post my schedule, I post who my students are, and there are students who are literally in almost every lesson. So it's like, you know, if you want a free 100-something hours of Melee content a week, it's $5. So
and
it's
a lot of people do, and that's
very
very worthwhile.
And one of the cool parts is that even if you don't want to like pay anything, my Discord has a lot of people who have learned from me. So if you have a question, you'll have 5 people who are like, this is what Sami would say. And then it's usually what I would say.
That's so sick.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's it.
Well, that's where I'm going to cut the stream. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Druggedfox, for being a part of the podcast. It was a pleasure having you. Yeah, it was excellent having you. You're a genius. I think everybody knows it. And yeah, please support this guy. He deserves it almost more than anybody in the scene. And I'll catch you guys next time. So peace out.
Yeah,
and yeah, of course. See you later.
Okay, bye everyone.